And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to happy hour number 32 with the Critical Drinker. That's me. We are going to be talking tonight about a movie called Dog Soldiers, which is a film that's near and dear to my heart. It's kind of appropriate that we're doing this tonight, actually, because we did Shaun of the Dead last week. And honestly, this movie did for werewolves like what Shaun of the Dead did for zombies. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about it. And I'm going to be talking tonight, rather than another content creator. It's basically just one of my subscribers who got in touch with me. We got chatting, and we decided we were going to just do this stream together. So welcome to Farewell Thunderchilds. Thanks for coming on, mate.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, boss.
Cool, man. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about Dog Soldiers. I guess, first of all, I'm always curious, like, how did you come across this movie initially? How did you find out about it?
Older brother got the DVD, and as you do, you're sort of going through his stuff because he's a younger child. And I found that. I was like, oh, I'll give that a look. And I must have been, I think I was about 11 or 12, something like that. I popped it on, just fell in love with the movie, just quoting it. Didn't understand half the words I was saying. I didn't know what cars he was. Becomes relevant at some point during the movie, but it was just it's a hard one to describe, isn't it? And then obviously I've been watching it again now as an adult, and it holds up. It's one of those movies that it's not big, it's not brash, it's not trying to be something really special. It just holds up really well, so I quite enjoy.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when I was, I was saying earlier that we're following up Shaun of the Dead with this. I think in terms of the writing, the dialogue, and the degree of like setup and payoff, and how everything is neatly tied up in this movie, this is absolutely on the same level as that film. So it's going to be really interesting to go through it and kind of talk about all those things and how they all fit together and how it works. And yeah, damn, man, like the characters are just brilliant. Like, you want to talk about memorable characters, like how about Spoon? He just
Spoon.
goes
with a spoon.
Boss that he is.
Yeah. Oh, he was fantastic. I mean, this movie, I hadn't seen it for 10 years, I could still name all the characters. That's how good it is.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you only learn the Sarge's name in one sentence, I know his name.
Yeah.
And you only hear it once.
It's Wells, isn't it?
It's Wells,
Sergeant
yeah.
Wells. Yeah.
Sergeant Wells, yeah. Obviously, Sarge. Cooper. Joe. Spoon. Bruce. Terry, the vomiting cavalier.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta love Terry.
I mean, they do such a good job early on in establishing them in like a really short space of time, like giving them their little character traits, giving them their quirks, and just letting you know who's who. That it just makes the rest of the movie much easier to watch, because it does cut about quite a bit when the action's kicking off, and it's just a lot easier to follow. That you know that's Joe there, that's Spoon there.
Yeah,
that's Cooper up with the Sarge.
What is great though, because what you can sometimes get in action movies when there's a lot of stuff going on simultaneously, is you lose the sense of where everyone is, and it sometimes feels like, you know, the various set pieces that are going on aren't really that connected to each other. But again, with this movie, because there's a real attention to detail, they spend the bulk of the film like holed up in an isolated farmhouse trying to defend it, and so you get to know the layout pretty well, and so you recognize which part of the house everyone's in, and they really put thought into like how they have to defend this place, and how, you know, if these monsters break through a certain area of the house, they've got to like seal it off, and so you kind of know where everything is. And again, that kind of spatial awareness is just really good for building up the tension, because you can sense how they're getting pushed back and pushed back.
Oh, it's great what they do with the house, especially when they take you outside and they show you what the werewolves can see. Spoiler: this movie's about werewolves. Sorry, chat. But
yeah,
so they can sort of. So obviously you've been inside for a majority of the movie and stuff, and you can see who's where. But then occasionally you get the outside panning, so you get like a really good idea of exactly what the situation is. Because I find that with some movies, when it's in isolated space, that because they never go outside of it, you just sort of lose focus on where the characters are. They could just be in a cube. So yeah. I like the fact they break away every now and again. You can just see, well, look, this is clearly what's going on around them, get an idea of space. But I mean, in terms of just, I mean, like you're saying with setup and payoff, it just like the first scene pays off at the end of the movie. So the very first scene.
I was going to talk about that. But yeah, and it all fits together like in a way that doesn't feel forced. Like when you get that first scene, it's like a couple who are out camping in the Highlands of Scotland. And the guy is a writer, isn't he? He's just gotten his first publishing deal, and so his girlfriend has gotten him a letter opener as his gift. It's to celebrate, and so it seems really appropriate. It's the kind of gift that someone would give for their loved one. But then, like you say, it becomes relevant right in the finale of the film. Like this thing that's set up right at the beginning, it eventually pays off, and it's just I love that attention to detail.
It is fantastic. I mean, I'm happy to kick off and just go through it as well, and then obviously whatever happens along the way, we can break off and talk about it. But since we've already opened on the first scene, we get the somewhat cliched couple camping in the woods. And like you're saying, they're just exchanging, having a bit of a chat. She gives him the letter opener, bit of a clunky line. Oh, it's solid silver, so be careful with it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly clunky, but it's the kind of thing you might say, like, don't take this.
Oh yeah, no, it doesn't take me out of it at all. It's just it's establishing it, and then obviously, as young lovers do, camping up in Scotland,
getting it on,
getting it on, and clearly werewolves follow the Jason Voorhees rules. When there's young couples about it, then they need to get involved, and it's quite clever. I like how they bring in the werewolf. Wow. So they're in a tent. He's obviously sending his hand down south, to a nice way to put it, and undoing her jeans. But then the zipper noise continues, and I like that. And then they both sort of sit up, panicking. I mean, very delicate werewolves, just slowly.
Yeah, they don't burst through the tent. They just slowly pull up the zip.
Yeah, I mean, given the size of their hands and their nails, I mean, you've got to really appreciate what they obviously didn't want to disturb them too early. I mean, my boy's about to get some,
They could have waited like 10 minutes or so. It wouldn't have taken long.
To be fair, he only needed 5. It's obviously been a long day.
I think, see, if you're camping in the Scottish Highlands at night as well, you want to get in and out quickly because, man, it's fucking freezing up
and then back in your sleeping bag.
There ain't going to be no cuddling after this one. I'm going back to my bag.
Hood up, caterpillar, done. And then obviously tent zips up, and poor lass. There is a bit of a gap there, which I quite appreciate, where it opens up and then you can just see their reaction. It's not sort of like, it is a jump. It's not really a jump scare, but it's obviously a scare, but it's not sort of like instant. It's like there's a bit of a gap, and then the arm reaches in and drags her out.
Well, what's interesting about that whole scene? There's not a scream at any point in it. She's getting pulled out by this thing, and the boyfriend's trying to hold on to her, but none of them are screaming. It's just very kind of straining noises of people trying to hold on, and the kind of tearing sound is like bits of her get ripped off, and like there's even a bit where you see her trying to reach for the letter opener and her hands all covered in blood, and he's just staring at her in horror. And I think that in a way that's kind of how people might react in a situation like that, because it's so completely unexpected. You would just go into shock.
Oh no,
you wouldn't even be able to scream. You'd just be like, I don't understand what's even happening here.
I've been unfortunate enough to have nothing like that.
You're telling me you've not been attacked by werewolves?
No, honestly, I haven't, mate. This is a bit of a shocker. I know the people down my way of the world has a bit of a bad reputation, but we're not that bad. I've obviously, I mean, you've probably been in situations as well where you've been in something shocking has happened, and I just fall silent. I actually sort of quite appreciate that you do sort of just. I mean, some people will kick and scream and stuff, but a lot of people, I mean, he's trying to save his girlfriend, but he clearly doesn't understand what's going on. And when they come back in for him, he's obviously just staring at them. He doesn't know what to do.
Yep. And you don't even need to see him get killed. The camera just cuts away, and that's when you get the next setup, which is our main man, Cooper, who is on selection with the SAS. I mean, you don't know it initially because he's if you know a bit about the SAS, they do all their selection training in Wales in the Brecon Beacons. So that's where he is. He's getting chased by a hunter force. You get to see him kick the shit out of a couple of the guys who are chasing him. He even throws a flashlight at one, which is cool.
I was going to say. So I like how it opens, but for some reason it's 2 hours earlier in North Wales. Not that that's relevant in the slightest.
It really isn't. No, I don't know why.
It's just because of the screen. 2 hours earlier, it's like okay. And I love that scene so much. So he's running, as you said, and you've got these people attacking him, and I just think if we'd have had him in that cottage with the flashlight and not the guns, I don't think those werewolves would have had a chance. He is
Yeah.
unstoppable with that thing. It's
He's a
amazing. No,
yeah,
it's
yeah. No,
brilliant.
he's a good guy, and this I guess just demonstrates that he's a pretty capable man. And so he's able to evade these guys for a fair while until he's cornered by Ryan, who's the leader of this SAS selection team, and it's none other than Sir Davos himself
Oh, it,
from Game of Thrones, but it's a very young looking version of him. I
it
like
is, yeah.
this movie was made, what, 2002? So it's almost 20
Yeah.
years ago. It's like, damn, when you see him there, he looks about, it looks like my age. It's crazy.
I was gonna say possibly mid 30s, pushing 40s. It
Probably,
is
yeah.
his introduction is great actually because obviously you don't know the context of what's happening with Cooper when you first see him. He's just running through
Yeah,
the woods.
yeah.
People are trying to get him. Obviously he's not used lethal force, so might give you a bit of a hint. But obviously Cooper gets taken down and in pops Sir Davos Seaworth to start talking with him. And he does have some great lines there where he's talking to him. It's like, what is it? Avoiding,
Well, he's saying
yeah,
you've
yeah,
avoided the hunting team for
yeah,
22 hours or something.
yeah,
You've done well.
22 hours, 47 minutes straight to the top of the class. And he's like, oh yeah, the key to survival is not hiding, but removing your enemy's ability to hunt you.
Yeah, and
Which
that leads into him shooting the dog. Someone
it
pointed out in
does.
chat here actually,
Yeah.
and I'd forgotten about this. The actor that played Cooper was in the Christmas episode of Father Ted, where they have to escape from the lingerie department.
Oh God, was he?
Forgotten about him.
Oh, was it? For six priests in the laundry department.
Yeah, that's
Oh
a
no,
classic episode.
now I can see it because he's really young in that.
Yeah, and he's
Really,
panicking
really
because he
young.
thinks they're never going to escape, and Ted has to
Yeah.
slap him around to get him to hold himself together.
Oh, that scene at the
Um,
end. Go, go, go.
Yeah, he's like pushing them out the door. Just for people in chat as well, like some of you might not be familiar with how we do these streams, but when super chats come in, we will do them all towards the end, like once we've talked about the movie a little bit, so we don't keep stopping and starting. But rest assured, every single chat that comes in, every single super chat will get answered. So don't worry if we don't do it straight away. It just avoids us stopping and starting.
You've never failed, drinker. You've always got to all of them.
I know, yeah. Even even when I'm a bit passed out.
You poor bastard.
Yeah, it's funny because when you get to the end, people like send little ones just to keep me on. Yeah, like you're never escaping.
Who would do that, mate? I've never done that. That's great. So
So
gets the
Ryan
dog.
wants him. Yeah, he wants him. He
Yeah.
wants Cooper to shoot the dog. He gives him a pistol and tells him to kill him. And Cooper's not willing to do it. And
Yeah.
he's like, "Well, you're going to have to do this if you want to pass this selection course."
Yeah.
And so he refuses, and that's when Ryan just takes the gun and shoots it himself. And I have to admit, I thought the gun would have just been empty, like it was just a test to see if he would actually go through with it. But no, it's got a bullet in it, and it kills the dog.
I mean, even at a young age, or maybe when I rewatched this in my late teens, I thought, I mean, those dogs are expensive, but in terms of like an asset, it's like that dog's probably undergone more training than half of the soldiers in the army. I was like,
Yeah.
ooh, and it's just, it's funny because if you look at the scene, how it sort of transpires is he's congratulating Cooper and saying how well you've done, and the dog's quiet, and it's only when the dog starts barking, it's like he has the idea to do it. It's like, oh,
Possibly.
since the dog's a kid, I think maybe they played that in editing, just put the sound in. Maybe he's always going to do it. I just found that interesting. He just seemed to like turn on a dime and just say, well, look, kill this dog. You know, this is important that you do it. And yeah, it's just obviously it cuts to him when they pull the trigger, and Cooper becomes quite emotional and runs at him and gets hauled off at gunpoint and gets told that he's not ready.
Yeah, exactly. And so you've established a couple of things that Cooper is a man of conscience. You know, he's good at what he does, but he's not willing to, just kill needlessly. And ironically enough, it's a dog, which he ends up fighting throughout the rest of the movie, essentially. And also you establish Ryan as this like slimy special ops guy who's got questionable morals. But anyway, so with that sort of scene out of the way, Cooper is sent back to his old unit, which is just a regular old army unit that are about to go on a big training exercise up in the Scottish Highlands. And you see them getting flown in by chopper, which is very clearly not a military chopper because it doesn't have any of the olive camel paint or anything on it.
Yeah. I think it just has army painted on the side. So I mean, they that is. I mean, it is an interesting scene. I mean, believe that those aren't the actual actors that are jumping out the helicopter. I think they actually had to get proper soldiers to do it because they couldn't cover people for that maneuver.
Probably.
It's jumping the better part of 2.5 feet, but
yeah, it's just one of those things. If someone falls and hurts themselves, they're not sure. That's it. That can sink the production. Like, in case you guys haven't clued in on this, like, Dog Soldiers was not made on a huge budget.
2.3 million, I think, Drinker. 2.3.
Yeah, which I think it works to its favor actually. For example, the werewolves, they look kind of fake as fuck, but for the most part of the movie, you only see tiny little glimpses of them. Just blink and you'll miss them, or they're in shadow. You'll see them in silhouette or whatever. So it makes very, very good use of what it has.
I mean, we'll get to the werewolves, but I'd just like to say with the werewolves, I really like the fact that they're practical. I genuinely do. This was 2002. This was the early days of CGI being in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see someone trying to do CGI with this, and firstly, it would have dated it horribly. And I just don't think. I mean, you've got to sell it, and I just don't think it would have appeared as real if it was CGI.
When you see them get hit, like, and it's squibs going off, they get knocked through windows and stuff, like, and it's all practical, like you say, and it's got so much more weight to it than just some CGI. One of the actors having to react to a CGI thing that's not even there. It would just be crap. So, like,
it would be. Yeah.
Movies like this just have the perfect compromise, where you've got slightly probably fake looking werewolves, prosthetics. But they're very, very sparingly used, and so they are much more effective as a result.
And I like, obviously, as the movie goes on, you see more of them, as you tend to do with horror. And obviously, towards the end, they're a bit more naked in terms of being there in front of you. But by that point, their threat has already been established.
Yeah, the only scene that really stood out to me is like, oh, this is so shitty looking, and it's such a shame because it's right at the climax where it's meant to be really emotional, but it's where the Sarge is like lying in the kitchen and he's about to blow the place up, and you see them like closing in on them, and they're all doing this weird kind of dance thing, like as they close in. It's like, why are you doing that?
Hey, they stole my moves. That's what I'm saying. If you ever see me on the dance floor going after Tatiana,
so.
I think actually, just on the very similar, the one that sort of does it for me in terms of, ooh, it looks a bit fake, is during one of the key fight scene, Cooper boots one of them out the window because it's got hold of his leg, and and its head is completely static, and its arms just go up and it just sort of like poleaxes around the corner,
right? And
because obviously the head doesn't move and things like that, and it just sort of just stands there and just goes.
Yeah,
and just yeets itself out the window. It's just one of those moments. I'm like, ooh, nice. Obviously, we can pick apart those elements of it, but it does. I don't think it takes away from just how well written and funny this movie is overall.
Absolutely, and this is really where it starts to kick in. Like the soldiers. This is the squad that we're going to be spending the rest of the movie with, who Cooper is now rejoined. They ditch out of the helicopter, which heads off, and so they are. They are now on the ground and getting ready to go. And the Sarge, who played by the awesome Sean Pertwee, straight away obviously starts issuing orders. I love how immediately they start fucking things up. Like, it's like everyone's okay, synchronize watches, and then Spoon's just like, forgot me watch.
I love it. So you open up with, I think it's Terry won't get off the helicopter. So Sarge is like, move. And you've got one of them, I won't go, Sarge, just to pull him off the helicopter.
Yeah, he's not even going into a war. He's just going on a training exercise. And he's like, I won't do it.
I'm not entirely sure if he's noticed, but he signed up for the army. It's sort of like, it's like being surprised if you sign up to be a fireman and they send you off to a fire.
I don't want to put it out.
But you can clearly sort of tell when they all sort of go down, like who's taking this seriously and who's mucking about, because you've got Cooper and Spoon sort of take up position. Brucey takes up a position. Terry doesn't know what he's doing running around. Joe just takes his hat off and just sits on the ground. It's like, I can't be bothered with this sort of attitude about him.
Yeah, well, that's
clear from the off.
That's very much Joe's character arc throughout this movie, isn't it? He's a massive football fan. England are going to be playing Germany, so it's a huge game for him, and he's missing it because he's on this shitty training exercise. And his whole thing is like, I don't want to be here, and I can't be arsed with it. Yeah. So he's totally resentful throughout the whole movie that he's having to deal with this stuff.
Yeah. And maybe you won't get this, but when he does describe it as full-on footy war, he's not
Yeah.
lying. England versus Germany is full-on footy war.
Well, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And it does. I like that because then it gives a chance to establish why they're there. So it cues in Sarge to just say like what they're there for, and it's a training exercise where they're 50 kilometers behind enemy lines, and they've got to get through. But who they're up against are special forces, and then obviously just to show off the script, really, Sean Pertwee just gives a great little line about what they're up against with special forces. He goes, well, just because we're carrying fake guns doesn't mean we have to be thinking happy thoughts. So if we run into them, I expect you to put the fire down and kick their fucking teeth in, because I swear to God, if you don't, they'll be having your balls for breakfast. It's like it's the dialogue's brilliant. I'm butchering it, obviously, but just to establish like whilst they're there for training, they've been told that they're up against elite soldiers.
Yeah, I mean, the Sarge is great because there's various scenes in the early part of the movie, because I know he's kind of removed from the command position at a certain point because he gets injured, but you know, he has to deal with loads of different things going on simultaneously, and he's just very efficient at issuing orders, telling people what they need to be doing. I love the line as well where they run into Ryan, and Ryan's like, "Oh, we're all gonna die here. They're gonna tear us apart." And he's like, "Now you just be quiet, like a good gentleman. You're scaring the lads."
Oh, I love it.
It's obviously a reference
Yeah.
to Zulu,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you've seen, but like there's a
Yeah, I have,
sergeant in that who's just really like on the ball. He's the guy who holds everything together.
But there's a couple of references to Zulu, if I'm right. At least one more.
There's tons, yeah. There's loads of references to Zulu, loads of references to aliens.
One
a
in
few
Star
references.
Trek. If you can spot there's a Star Trek reference. If you've spotted it, chat, type it down.
Right.
There's a Star Trek reference in this movie.
The Kobayashi.
Spot on. Kobayashi Maru.
I didn't want to ruin it for chat, but yeah, the Kobayashi Maru, which is a great little.
Chat would have been quicker than, at least some of chat would have been quicker than me.
Yeah. There's also references to Jaws as well, with the gas cylinders that almost lands on top of Spoon.
Yeah,
which is it's great.
There's loads actually when you think about it. So they're talking about why they're there, what they're supposed to be doing. He sort of talks to each one. So obviously Spoon's forgotten his watch, so Sarge gives him his watch. Great line. You know, just because it's shiny and new doesn't mean it's worth shit, but I want that back when we're done.
Yeah. You know what's interesting though? He does get it back.
He does. Yeah. Again, set up.
Set up and payoff. And like what's interesting as well is like when they come across the special forces group that have been massacred, and you know, Spoon keeps trying to get the Sarge's attention, and he keeps saying like, "Not now, Spoon."
Yeah.
And when he eventually does, he's like, "I don't know if you care, but it's going to be dark in about half an hour."
He's using his watch to tell him.
Yeah. So again, just like little tiny things like that. It's just really great that they thought to include it all the way through. It becomes this through line.
Yeah. So you're setting up all the characters. You've got Joe obviously just moaning about football. Spoon's taking the piss. Terry doesn't seem to know what he's doing. Bruce, I know we don't spend a lot of time with Brucey, but he just seems to be sort of like quite a good normal soldier. There's nothing too extravagant about his character and stuff. And then Sarge has some time with Cooper at the map, and they've planned out what they've got to do. And this becomes quite relevant later on, which I quite like.
The gist is they've got to try and infiltrate the enemy lines, and so Cooper's looking at this map, and he figures out that there's a gap they can go through, like they have to work their way through a gorge or something like that, and that will allow them to make their way through, because he is pretty savvy and he's good at what he does. So the Sarge is like, yeah, cool, we'll go with that. And I think you get a little bit of dialogue between them when the Sarge is saying to him, you know, I know you're pissed off about failing selection, but you know, we're glad to have you here, and so that becomes his kind of thing, that he's, you know, he sees himself as perhaps a bit of a failure for not having made it into special forces, whereas, you know, you find out.
And the Sarge, you establish the Sarge quite well as obviously being quite a strict, you know, he's a sergeant in the army, but one-to-one with Cooper, he's there, you know, like, squad would be worse off without you, mate. I'm glad you're not any. Just as like the only people who bowl with special forces are what Glory Hunter and full-on fucking fuckwits. So obviously he's just trying to reassure him that, you know, he'd be missed if he'd gone. And a Sarge taking the time to do that with him. I mean, it's establishing obviously the Sarge as well. He's a taskmaster, but he does care about his men.
Yeah, no, very much so. And yeah, the banter between all of them is just brilliant. Like
It's
really
fantastic.
sharp, really fun. You know, they're all taking the piss out of each other as soldiers do, and it's great to hear. But like, they're still, you know, the Sarge is the guy who's keeping them motivated and keeping them on task because really none of them are taking it that seriously. It's just a bullshit training exercise for them. They're
Yeah.
not really that invested in it. But off they go, and I think that's when they sort of they march most of the day and then they make camp for the night.
Yeah, there's a brief scene in there where they're taking a break, and Cooper's saying that there's hikers that go missing every now and again, and no one knows what it is. They do. He does. He's got like a
Yeah,
little scene where he's just establishing that it's known that people go missing in these parts, but none of them are taking it seriously. And then obviously they head off to camp. There's in the interim, just before they reach camp, there's something that's well, there's two things. Probably one's a bit of a nitpick on my part. Actually, they're whistling. I can't remember. I know the tune, but
yeah. Do,
they're
do,
whistling
do,
along.
do.
Do do
Do,
do do
do,
do
do,
do do.
do.
Yeah, thank you football for that one. And I just can't see myself when you're behind enemy lines. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously not taking it seriously, but you see Ryan is
Yes, that was it.
looking
Yeah,
at them, is spying on them, and he turns to the soldier next to him and just says, "Radio head to base and tell them the flock is heading for the fold," which
yeah.
is obviously quite ominous.
So it's kind of establishing that Ryan is keeping his eyes on them, and you know he's got a plan for these guys. You know, it's not just sheer luck that they made it through enemy lines. So yeah, that's something you learn a little bit more about as we go. What was the other thing I was going to say about this sort of section? No, I think that was pretty much it.
Yeah. No,
It'll
so
come back to me like 2 a.m. or something.
I interrupted you, mate. It's only because the whole Ryan's watching them thing sort of happens just
Yeah.
before they reach the camp. That so it just cuts tonight, and they're chatting about what scares them.
Yeah, you get this great monologue. Well, apart from Cooper's one, which is like, what scares you? Spiders and women and spider women.
Yeah. Actually, the one that makes me laugh the most is the first one, Brucey, where he goes, "All right, Brucey, what scares you? Destructive nature of the human condition."
I think they're trying. Yeah, it's like they're trying to establish him as a little bit of an intellectual or something amongst the
Are
group.
you taking the piss? And you just look at me. Do you think so? And then Joe's isn't that funny, and it's not overly funny. And then, like you said, when it goes to Cooper, it's just the way he delivers it. It's like spiders, women, spider women. Which I'm not sure if he's seen some cosplay like I have, but I don't think he'd be saying that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then
obviously,
yeah,
it's the Sarge's monologue, which is fantastic because
exceptional.
It's again just a good example of how this film walks that line between drama and comedy, and it switches so easily between the two of them. And I think as we were talking about this a little bit before we started, and when I've compared it to Shaun of the Dead, like for me, Shaun of the Dead is a comedy that has real moments of drama, whereas this is more of a drama that has real moments of comedy. But either way, they switch between those genres really seamlessly, and so you get that real monologue from the Sarge about a mate of his who got a devil tattoo on his arse, which is funny. It sounds great. Then they were off in Iraq and he trod on an anti-tank mine and it blew him to pieces. And the only piece that they found of him was like the devil tattoo. That was the only bit that was intact. And again, it's just really sinister, but it really sobers the group up just for a few seconds.
I mean, his opening line when they're joking about, so obviously they've had a laugh, and I think it's Terry goes, "I want to know what scares the Sarge," and Spoon goes, "Oh, fuck off, nothing scares the Sarge," and it's just the way he just says, "I don't know about that. The thought of never seeing my wife again scares the shit out of me." And it's his delivery is just because it's taken. Obviously, you've had a bit of joviality with them talking about spider women and castration and the self-destructive nature of the human condition. Three things you never say in the same sentence, and then he just says that just really bluntly, and it sort of brings you back a bit and just thinks, well, yeah, this is a real soldier in an army, and he's obviously got a wife, and he doesn't, there are things that scare him. And that monologue, I would, if anyone hasn't seen it in chat, watch the movie just for Sergeant Wells. If for nothing else, I mean, you'll love the movie either way, but especially that scene is just the way he sort of starts off, and it's quite a bantery story. It's like, I forget the name. I think it was Oswald. I think it was Henry Oswald, something like that. They said, "Oh yeah, our first tour, so he went and got tattoos, and he sort of went through the whole story. And then it's when he switches to it was about 6 days in patrolling the Iraqi border, and poor Eddie still on an anti-tank mine. And it's just, he sort of goes through it, and just like, it really puts things in perspective, lads, when you've got to scoop up your mate with a shovel and stick him in a bin bag. That's harrowing. That is genuinely harrowing, especially with his delivery.
Really, really dark stuff. And I love
he sells it.
Yeah, he really does. Like, a great performance by Sean Pertwee. And then I love how the mood it switches again, because then, there's a few moments of awkward silence, and then I think Spoonie starts telling like a joke.
Yeah, man walks into the bar with a dog on it.
Yeah, and like, you think, oh, okay, we're going back to comedy mode, and just as he's launching into it, this fucking cow just falls out of nowhere and lands right in the middle of the camp. It's the most, you'd never ever expect something like that to happen. It's so fucking random, but just so well done.
It just splats on the ground, and you see everyone react. So everyone's pulled back, but Terry is picked up his blank gun and is just laying into it.
Because you hear Spoonie shouting, "You're firing blanks, man!"
Spoonie starts pissing himself with laughter, and obviously you could tell that with because so they take a look at this. I'm sorry, the way the cow just gets introduced into the movie, just it sort of brings you back, and the way that so everyone reacts, and it's all kicking off, and then they have a look at it, and Cooper's there saying, "I mean, these aren't entry wounds. It looks like it's been bitten and clawed." It's like, and Sean Pertwee has a great response because, so what you're saying, it died of natural causes, which, to be fair, I mean, I'm not sure how many wild beasts you do have roaming around in Scotland.
Only me after a few too many bottles of toilet duck.
Yeah, but I do like that bit, and then obviously you can see how scared Terry is. It's like, we should phone this in. Sorry, not phone it in. We should radio this in. We should go back. And it's another great bit of dialogue. It's like, I'm not breaking radio silence for a dead flying fucking cow.
Yeah.
The way he strings that sentence together is just perfect. So then obviously they decide to sleep on it, basically.
Yeah, they're going to stay there until morning, and then they have a look. And like, to be fair, this is put into a little bit more context the next day, because you don't quite realize it, but they were camped at the foot of a cliff, and so the cow had been injured and it was dying, and it fell right off the cliff and landed on their camp. So that's why it just plonked right into the middle of the scene. But
I remember seeing it for the first time. I had no idea how the cow got there.
I know, yeah, I was like that. I was like, how the fuck did it land on them? Was it in a plane or something? Did it parachute in? It's using the trees.
God, no. No, maybe it's spider cows, not spider women that Cooper has been worried about.
But anyway, so the Sarge wants to know what the fuck happened to this thing. So they track it, they follow the blood trail back to where it happened. And I think that's when Ryan, you get a scene with Ryan who's been watching them, and he's now in the woods, skulking around with his night vision goggles, looking for something. And you find out that he's being tracked by it, because you get to see its point of view. He draws a weapon, it pounces on him, and you just see blood splatter everywhere. So you assume he's dead,
I love that scene. It's obviously a very cheap way of doing it, but you get to establish how they see the world and how the world looks and how Ryan's seeing the world, because Ryan's using night vision, so everything goes green. And when you're looking through the eyes of the werewolves, everything's black and white, which really does make sense for something that hunts at night.
And it's a dog. Well, essentially a dog, and they're colorblind.
That makes sense.
So they see the nighttime woodland and everything just as clear as day. That's the point that the movie's kind of making there. So, again, it makes sense. They got excellent night vision. And so the squad are making their way back to where this cow was attacked. And I think that's when they see a flare go up in the distance. And they're like, what the fuck is this? So they head into this camp that was belonging to Ryan's Special Forces unit, and the place has just been ransacked, destroyed. There's just blood everywhere, ruined equipment everywhere, and I think they're looking around. They find live weapons, because their own ones are useless, obviously, and none of them have managed to get off a shot. So what the fuck happened here? And I think that's when Ryan, and a very injured Ryan, breaks out and tries to
up.
Yeah, he just pops up out of nowhere and points a gun at them before collapsing.
So they've gone around, and there's bits of people everywhere. So they've started, like you said, they've started divvying out the guns. They try and find the radio, because their radio isn't working. their radio isn't working.
Mhm.
And then as Brucey sat there trying to sort out the radio, then as you said, Ryan pops up and he just says, "Oh, just help me," and then he just falls back down. So Cooper obviously knows
What I
who Ryan
love,
is. Oh, sorry.
yeah. And what I love about this scene, like, there's so many different things going on. Like, everyone's trying to tell them things. Like they're trying to tend to Ryan, who's badly injured. Spoon keeps trying to get the Sarge's attention. He's issuing orders to the rest of the troops to secure the area and pick up any weapons they can find. Cooper's mentioning that there's nets and tranquilizer darts everywhere. Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Terry can't get the radio working, and then eventually Spoon just gets the Sarge's attention, and he's like, "I don't know if you care, but it's going to be dark in about half an hour." And that's when everyone just kind of falls silent, and there's this real moment of like, "Oh shit!"
That genuine attention.
Exactly, like a real sinister, like, just pause in everything.
There's
like that.
there's a few things about the camp as well. Like when he's looking at Ryan when he's injured, he says that he doesn't have a cap on, he doesn't have a uniform. He's just got his dog tags. So whatever they're doing here, they're covert. And I think this is a time that with Bruce, you take it apart, check it out, and that's when they find that there's a tracker in their radio.
Yes.
Which is obviously then when Spoon references the Kobayashi Maru, they screwed it so he can't win. And, the
what
Sarge,
you obviously find out.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say that this is actually, mate. Obviously, sorry.
Yeah, no. I think we're talking over each other. Obviously, you find out later that Ryan had planted that bug in their radio so that he could track their position, so you know exactly where they were going to be.
Yeah, I think that, and also as well, that gives Sarge another opportunity to sort of calm his men because they're all saying, "Oh, why they stitched us up? Why are they tracking us?" And he just sort of chips in with, "Maybe it was just some joker who didn't want Joe to hear the footy results."
Yeah.
And at the first part, I mean, especially with the, when they look at the cow, goes, "Oh, it died of natural causes." And when they're heading in that direction, it's like, "Well, it's on our way," and I'm curious. He's very good at delivering ways of motivating his men without sort of scaring them or intimidating them.
Yeah.
Which I find quite interesting, especially from a sergeant, because he could just tell him to shut up and listen, but he's engaging with his men, which I find, again, quite endearing to the character. It's like the effort he puts in.
Yeah, when you got like a guy like a Sarge who's an NCO, he's guys like that are a kind of different class from the sort of proper officer guys who are a bit more like arrogant and hoity-toity with the men. And he's probably just come up from being a squaddy himself, so he's much more understanding of like what their situation is. And you get the real impression that they're all friends, like they all know each other pretty well, so they've got like that bit of banter between them. So like you say, he is great at just like actually listening to what they have to say and trying to deal with each of their problems in turn. So like good leadership skills there. I mean, it's great. Throughout the movie, I think for the most part, the characters make good, sensible decisions based on what they know and what information they have and what resources they have. It's pretty rare where you look at it and think, "Oh God, you're just doing the typical horror movie thing of being really dumb because the plot needs it to happen."
I fully agree with you there. I generally can't think of a point during this movie where you roll your eyes at what someone decided to do. I just don't think that happens in this movie, which is rare. Especially, it's a low budget horror movie. I mean, that's usually the gold mine of eye rolling. If you think about it that way, it's like that's where you go to if you want to see the same sort of things happen over and over again. But every decision they make makes sense with the information that they have. Which
and so the Sarge, very rightly decides they need to get the fuck out of there since they don't have radio contact, and they're going to get attacked by whatever wiped out this camp. They police up all the weapons that they can find and head off with an injured Ryan. And I think it's Bruce who decides who volunteers to be like, tail end Charlie and cover their retreat.
It's Bruce.
And so, he's watching through the trees, like looking for a target, and then he sees something moving, pretty rapidly towards him. And for some reason, he just cannot use his gun. Like, I don't know if it jams. I was trying to look at the fire selector. It's like, damn, did you like leave it with the safety on or something? I couldn't see it. They seem to be on automatic though.
He checks the cartridge. So he checks the cartridge, puts it back in, racks it again. You've got to assume it's a malfunction with the gun. You have
I
to put
guess
it down
so.
to
Yeah.
gun. It does give quite a bit of time with him checking it and loading it and reloading it. So we have to assume that it's the gun, and then obviously off into the woods he runs.
Yeah, he basically ditches the weapon and runs for it and goes straight into a fucking tree branch
Yeah,
and like impales himself
yeah,
on it.
that if I'm honest, that bit does sort of make me not grimace. I wouldn't say that's the right word to use. It does take me out of it a little bit because I really have to think, how fast do you have to be running to take a tree log about 4 inches in diameter through the sternum? Like,
Yeah, because when you see it like protruding from his back, right, it's not even sharp. Like it
no,
looks kind of blunt. It's like, fuck, man, how fast? Like you say, how fast were you
and
running?
he's cleared like a good 2.5 foot into it.
Yeah, he
It's not like
really
he's
went into this thing.
yeah. It's I mean, at one point you think you'd stop. It's like ow, but
Yeah,
so
yeah,
obviously he's poor Bruce, brave lad, decided to stay behind and protect everyone, but ended up getting spiked for it, and then he gets taken down by one of the werewolves, which again you don't see. It's very much you're just looking at his corpse hanging on this branch, and then it snaps in half, and you hear the growling. So again, keeping the monster away from the camera for now.
yeah, which is exactly what you should do in movies like this,
Yeah.
always. So yeah, I think the Sarge goes back to try and find him. He
Yep.
like just sees blood everywhere, and that's when one of the werewolves goes for him, and slices him right open.
Here we
Yeah,
go. Yeah,
this is you get that great line. Oh, my guts are out.
yeah, yeah. I've binned, mate, because so Sarge is horrifically wounded, disemboweled, I think.
Properly
Yeah,
eviscerated.
actually, yeah. I looked up. I went, "Is this the correct use of eviscerated?" I was like, "Yes, it is. I'll save that for
Yeah.
later." Um, his intestines are outside of him. Cooper comes in and they shoot at the werewolf and drive it back momentarily, and it's just, I mean, the ridiculousness of it. Obviously, there's a guy there with his intestines hanging out of there, and Cooper's there trying to push him back in, and
This is a really it's like
it looks so
really makes you grimace, doesn't it? Because he's
and
like, yeah, we're
his
gonna put them
acting,
back in.
yeah, his acting is it's like his acting as if he's like really that art that is his intestines that he's holding in his hands. It's like, oh my guts are hanging out because we'll push them back in. It's like they're not gonna fucking fit.
Yeah, they're not gonna fit.
It's like, oh, it's brilliant. It's like leave, and again he's saying leave me for obvious reasons, because he's binned. But Cooper picks him up. It does do a bit of a cut because obviously he's holding his intestines, and then in the scenes later on, it doesn't look as bad as it did in that shot. Because I think if for the rest of the movie it was as bad as it was in that shot, that you would have like an actual trail of sausages behind him.
Yeah, well, there's a bit where like not long after, like they both fall over and he lands face down on the ground, and it's like, oh, if that was happening, like your guts would be all over the ground there, my friend. But
yeah, they're like a coiled spring, if I understand it. And once they get outside, it's there's not easy to fold it back in.
yeah, it's something I hope I never prove, if you know what I mean.
No, I think I can live with avoiding that one as well, if I'm honest, mate.
Yeah, but either way, the next section actually there was a really good example of like a fight in withdrawal for the military because they're all on the run from these werewolf things. You've got two injured men like Ryan and the Sarge, so they've got to help them, and they've got to try and lay down cover and fire. And that's what you see. You see them leapfrogging by squads as they fall back. Like some guys are providing cover and fire, others are falling back, and then they switch places. And it's just a really smooth sequence. It's just really well done. Again, just like guys who are actually doing a good job at what they're doing.
I have to assume that the actors had some form of basic military training. The way they hold the guns.
Yep.
And everything about it, really. I mean, obviously not full on months and months, but they look as if they are professional soldiers. Got to give it to them.
They seem to move well and stuff, and there's good cooperation between them, and it's just a good sequence where it's like trying to use military tactics against something that's not any kind of opponent you've ever faced before. This isn't soldiers you're fighting here; it's some kind of insane monster that they could never have conceived of, but they're still trying to take it on using what they know.
And now that it's getting darker, they can actually show them a little bit. You get some running past camera and some out of shot. So you start to see a little bit more of them now. Now that it's getting darker, they could introduce their form a bit more in there.
Yeah.
You get an idea of what they are. So they're about 8 foot, 8.5
They're
foot
huge.
tall.
Yeah, they're really big.
Huge. I love their design. I like the fact that they're almost primarily human in form up into like the head and the arms.
Well, all their limbs are like unusually long, so like the arms and the legs are, everything's elongated and stretched out, and it's like you would see if a dog was stood up on its hind legs, just like really unusually shaped. And like I say, the movie is quite careful about not showing you too much of them for as long as possible.
Because normally with werewolf movies, they appear to be quite stocky. You know what I'm saying? Like quite built, quite. I mean, if we even go back to the sort of American Werewolf in London, those sort of things, but they seem to like really focus in on the walking on all fours sort of hind leg approach, and I just like the look of these ones. Actually, it's just interesting design choice, and I think it really works for this movie, having them slightly more humanoid, because then they sort of counteract the soldiers.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's like it's not sort of like you still see there's a human element to them.
By the way, can I ask a favor of you?
Yes, certainly.
Because a few people in chat have twigged that you're from a similar part of the world to where Hot Fuzz is set.
Yes.
And they were wondering if you might be able to say, was it murder, Sergeant Angel?
Shall we just go through more? Yeah. I don't know. Talking about murder, Sergeant Angel.
Hey!
Yes.
It's brilliant. It's like I'm in the movie.
Yeah. When you were doing the Hot Fuzz stream, obviously with the long man, I was in, especially when you described it as Devon. That hurts, sir. It's the West Country.
Sorry. Yeah,
I'll let it go. But the best line that I love to do in that accent is, "What's the situation? 2 blokes and a fuckload of cutlery."
Yeah. I think my favorite line was, "Angel, don't you go being a twat now."
Don't you go being a twat now. Which I must say, as much as Hot Fuzz is an amazing film, and I get to quote it every now and again, it did replace Vicky Pollard as what Bristol was known for. So I'm actually quite thankful this movie came along.
Yeah.
Because up to that point, we had, I think, Vicky Pollard, and that was about all we had, which is a very British reference.
Knowing who Vicky Pollard is, I think this was a good switch up, having Hot Fuzz instead.
Very much so, because if I heard yibbit, nubbit, yeah, one more time.
As well, though, David Prowse, the guy who did, who basically was the physical form of Darth Vader. When he did his actual lines, like people, when James Earl Jones wasn't actually doing the dub-overs, like he was actually performing all the lines of Darth Vader on set, and he had that same accent, didn't he?
Yeah, I've had to show people that because they don't believe it exists.
That is,
it's fantastic. Just a huge imposing Darth Vader. I'll give you just one last one.
Yeah, okay.
Find them. I want them alive. Oh my god.
Poor Carrie Fisher having to act opposite that.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not ashamed of my accent. It's who I am. But I just can't help but grimace when you see Darth Vader like pointing down at Carrie Fisher. Yeah. It's almost like, all right, lover.
Yeah.
Popping down the shots. All right, my lovely. Oh, spot bother down in their old farm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, no. Happy to perform if required. It's
you've made fake names day. That was the person who asked for that. So there you go.
It's been my pleasure, sir.
Nice. So I think this point in the movie, they're trying to like fight their way back from these werewolves, and that's when they fall down onto a road. Wouldn't you know it? A car just happens to be coming, and it's driven by Megan, who's the female sort of lead in this movie. Yeah. She's the only woman in this movie now that I think about it. Yeah.
Which might be a good time to mention, because Neil, I forget his name, who directed this movie? Sorry. It's
Neil Marshall.
Neil Marshall, sorry, I just forgot his surname. He directed Descent.
Yes,
which is an all-female cast.
Yeah.
And this movie is a very macho testosterone movie. Call it what it is. I love it for it. But and sort of how Cooper, because it comes up later, thinks of women as well is quite negative. But then he does The Descent, very very soon after this movie, and obviously that's a very I would say spectacular movie. I'd imagine if I rewatched it, it has problems because it always does.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good horror movie. Really
I thoroughly
good.
did as well. But I just find that interesting. He did like an all bloke one and an all girl one, and obviously this was the early 2000s where no one really cared, which was good. It was just sort of like, oh, here's Dog Soldiers, here's Descent.
I mean, I think back then it was more just, this is a cool horror movie about, you know, a group of women trapped in a cave system underground getting hunted by monsters. Like, not a totally dissimilar premise to Dog Soldiers, but like the comedy elements are missing from that. It's dead serious.
Oh yeah, there's nothing even remotely. I don't even think in the dialogue beyond some early banter they might have when they're getting started, but once they go into that, it is a serious movie all the way through.
Yeah,
nothing happens much else.
So
Megan rocks up, which I know you say conveniently, but the plot does justify why she's there.
Yeah, as we find out, it's not just random chance that she happened to be driving right in that area at that time. She almost runs over Spoon, actually, because he falls off the road right in front of her. You know?
Spoon goes sliding down the hill, and he's lying on the floor. Whoa! And then the car stops just before there. And then the way she's introduced as well, it does sort of let you know that she knows what's happening, because she just opens the door and screams, "Get in!"
Yeah.
So she obviously has an idea. They all pile in the back. The car's stuck. Cooper, very calm throughout all of this, trying to get Megan to get the car out the mud, and then
trying to talk a woman through working a gearbox is a fucking challenge at the best of times, mate.
Believe it or not, all of the girls I know are better drivers than I'll ever be, which is
really,
I know, yeah. And I think one of them will probably end up watching this, so I'm going to make sure that's down on record.
Oh well, there you go. You're not going to get reported to HR or anything now. You're fine.
You never know. And then obviously it's not over yet. A werewolf. You assume that they're on top of the car. They stick their arm through. You could again see the reactions. You got Terry is just panicking, just freaking out in the corner, and then you got the Sarge, even though his guts are hanging out, is just screaming "shiv it," and then Joe just drives the knife straight through his wrist.
This is a sore one because like you can see the werewolf trying to pull its arm out through the gap, like, and it's blocked by the knife, which is impaled through it, and then it just like goes. You hear like a ripping sound, and then you just see the knife fall to the ground, like covered in gore.
I mean, that's going to leave a mark.
Yeah, it's because these things are basically indestructible. It doesn't really matter, but man, that looks sore. And it's a very Aliens moment, like, you know, in Aliens where they're trying to get into the APC. And you know, the alien tries to like break through the door, and they have to shoot it with a shotgun. And there's one on the roof, and Ripley has to like knock it off. It's very much like that scene. Yeah. Similar kind of idea where they're all stuck in this tiny little thing trying to get out of there.
And then thankfully they do. Drinker, would you mind just giving me a 5-minute reprieve?
Yeah, cool,
I'll be
man.
right back, boss.
Good, man. Do some super chats.
Oh, wicked. 2 seconds, boss.
All right, no worries, man. All right, cool. So while we're waiting here, I'll go through some of the super chats that were outstanding. Just give me a second while I bring it all up because I wasn't ready for this yet. I'm sorry. I'll try and get it up as quickly as possible. And that's the title of my next sex tape. All right. Okay. Supers. There we go. So the first one here is from Maka Jr. says, reach out to Azzy's friend Rikita Law for a watch of Train to Busan. Excellent movie. He liked that movie and he's a great YouTuber. You're amazing. Watch all your vids. Thanks, man. I'll talk to Rikita Law and see if he's perhaps interested in doing one of these. Chucksenhausen says, in a recent interview on the Heavy website, Ralph Macchio says that Cobra Kai series will not only be great fan service, but also be unpredictable. Will that be a good thing or a bad thing? It can only be a good thing. I don't want it to be too predictable, but I have heard that Terry Silver is going to be back. In fact, yeah, he absolutely is because he's in the trailer, so I'm really looking forward to that because he was fucking great. Unhinged Entertainment says, Drinker and Dog Soldiers, I have a red rocket in my pants. I love this movie. Zero Depressive says, Drinker, you want to talk about your trust issues? Hit me up, bro. Anytime. Why else would you not have mods to clean out your chat? I mean, I've been keeping an eye on chat, and it's generally been okay. There was 1 or 2 people that I just had to put in time out because they were just spamming it, but otherwise it seems all right. But if there is anything going on, let me know. Also, one of the people on Super Chat asked for a kiss, so here you go. Mwah! Yeah, that's it. That's the best I can do from this distance.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, sorry. As probably too stereotypical for where I'm from, I'm on the cider this evening.
Lovely cider.
It is. Yep. We'll brag it. We'll do some Wurzels later on, boss. We'll see how the stream goes.
Yeah.
But yes, unlike your whiskey, this thing has a shorter time span to getting out your system, I suppose, to be a generous way of saying it. But I will be ceasing my drinking. It is a pleasure, obviously, sharing a beverage with the drinker himself. But some of us have to wake up early tomorrow morning, so I'm going to be behaving myself from now on, chap.
No, that's cool, man. You got to do what you got to do.
Indeed, sir.
A man who's a veteran streamer, you learn to take the most efficient alcohol you can get, because you don't want to be drinking beer on a stream like this. You'll just be pissing all night.
Yeah. You work your way up to 80% proof. You just have a pipette of it. There we are.
Exactly. Hook it up to my IV.
In the eye.
Yeah. So now that they've hooked up with Megan, she drives them back to like the nearest farmhouse where they can patch up the Sarge, because he's in a bad way, obviously. And when they get there, the place is deserted. Wouldn't you know
it? They're friends of hers, obviously. Goes on in, and actually, I missed it, so it's my fault. But when they're at the Special Forces camp after it's been destroyed, another great line from the movie, and I'm sure chat has spammed it enough, is the Sarge when he's dealing out the gun, saying, this is no longer an exercise, we're in a live fire situation, so if Little Red Riding Hood should rock up with a bazooka and a bad attitude, I expect you to chin the bitch. And see, that line's relevant because as Spoon's coming into the house, he's going up the stairs, he's going to go, little pigs, we've come to nick your video. And I think it's like 3 or 4 different sort of fairy tale references throughout this. They mentioned Goldilocks and the Three Bears later on as well, and
yes, I picked up on that one for sure.
I like that how it sort of doesn't necessarily tie it all together, but it does sort of really just sort of ground you a little bit, because everyone knows these fairy tales. Everyone knows Three Little Pigs.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Red Riding Hood. Everyone knows Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and they're just nice little references to keep you connected with. This is a fantasy situation, I suppose would be a way of putting it. This is a fairy tale situation, just a really horrible one. Yeah,
it's a grim fairy tale.
Very much so.
And so, like the place is very recently deserted, as you see, because like the fire's still lit. There's food cooking on the stove and the table's set and everything. So it's like everyone's just cleared right out of there in the last hour or so. Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so they kind of set up shop there, and I think that's when Cooper starts questioning Megan about how they can get out of there, where the nearest town is, and what they're going to do. And so she kind of explains to them, the nearest place is like Fort William, I think.
Fort William. 4-hour drive. I know we chatted about this before we went live, but Drinker, is there anywhere in Scotland that's 4 hours away from the nearest?
No, because she says at one point, the nearest telephone is 50 miles as the crow flies. It's like, nah, nowhere in Scotland is 50 miles from civilization. That's absolute nonsense.
But is what she's saying? Can we trust what she's saying?
Yeah, exactly. She's clearly trying to lead them down a certain path, but she does seem intent on getting out of there initially. So they're going to head out and escape. But that's when they find out that their Land Rover, which they only just arrived in, has been destroyed. Like the engine's been ripped apart, so they've got no way of getting out now.
Yeah, you've got Cooper and Spoon outside, and Cooper pops up a flare, and he's and you could tell that he's seen them, but Spoon hasn't. And then Spoon sort of clocks them in the distance. You can just see their form. And it's actually, I'd like that. It's quite a tense scene when you think about it, because Cooper's obviously just keeping still. He's seen that Spoon's now seen him. He's like, don't stare at them. And you got Spoon there going, I can't help it. Yeah. Which, to be fair, I think it's a completely valid point on Spoon's part. I'm not.
Yeah, if there was a fucking werewolf stood 50 yards away, I would have a really tough time not looking at it.
It's just really like, don't stare back, and it's like, I can't help it. So like you said, he finishes the car off. Essentially, it's already been binned, but he shoots out the petrol underneath, and then in true movie fashion, boom.
Explodes in spectacular fashion, which it has to do. And I
then
think
it kicks right off.
Like straight away, the werewolves start coming in, trying to break through the door. They're trying to fight them off. I think the dog, which is the only member of the family that used to live there, which is still there, starts trying to rip the bandages off the Sarge's wounds. And
there's so much going on. You are so close in. There's the bottom of a stairwell, a door, and a passageway. You've got 6 characters in the space of 3 foot of each other, but you've got the dog trying to get the bandages off of the Sarge who's on the floor. You've got Megan trying to get the dog off there. You've got Cooper, Spoon, and Joe trying to hold the door back. You've got Terry stood in the corner freaking out, and then you've got Ryan getting more aggravated as it goes on.
The next moment, is truly a moment of cinematic perfection, when Ryan picks up a gun, he's going to shoot the dog, and then Terry just turns around and goes, "Oh Christ!" and throws up on his head.
Yeah, it's all going off. It is quite interesting. That he just sort of it's round 2 for him. In a very short space of time, Ryan in this movie would have clocked 2 dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
You can see him going for the dog, and then just Terry just above him, just going, "Jesus Christ!"
I just love how that's Terry's response, is just to throw up.
Clearly, again, establishing that he's just not cut out for this in the slightest. And then, obviously, Ryan quite annoyed that someone's vomited on his head, which I think I can empathise with.
I wouldn't be too pleased if it happened to me. Put it that way.
I'm sure, regardless of how much toilet duck you've managed to consume, I don't think you've ever done that to anyone. Have you?
I'm the one doing the vomiting, alright?
I'm the giver, not the receiver in this particular relationship. So he stands up to Terry, obviously threatens him. Joe steps in the way in full Geordie fashion. "Do you want to fucking go, right up in his face?" Again, it does establish that even if they take the piss out of each other, which they do religiously, they're obviously friends and soldiers.
They'll stand up. Yeah,
Joe's in Ryan's face like that. In a heartbeat, he's up and he's right in Ryan's face, and he's just threatening him. And then Ryan backs off and goes upstairs to sort himself out. And then Cooper checks in on Terry, and I'm assuming you know what the line comes next. Yeah,
it's like, "I've got a real craving for a kebab." It's like, you're fine then. Yeah, that's the thing to do when you've spewed on a night out. Get a kebab, don't you? But yeah, interesting that Ryan's able to walk up the stairs with no problems when he was barely able to walk before. It's almost like he's healing up really rapidly.
They do that subtly beforehand, where he's leaving the car when they arrive at the cottage, and Joe's helping him, but then he pushes Joe off of him and just sort of limps in. When an hour ago he was going to die of he was dead an hour ago.
Yes, yeah.
So clearly, something's going on there.
Yeah, really. It's good acting on Liam Cunningham's part.
Yeah,
he just you see this gradual improvement in his condition. Like he's, like you say, he's barely able to walk before. Then he's limping through the forest. Then he kind of walks stiffly in from the car, and then he's able to just walk up the stairs without any issues. It's gradual, but you really see that progression. Yeah.
And he's having a moment in the mirror. So he's gone upstairs to obviously clear himself off. He's covered in vomit. And I've watched this scene a few times. I don't believe there's any makeup. I don't believe there's physically anything different. But how he's looking in the mirror, how he's tilting his head, you can tell that something's up there. Something's not quite right. Yeah, something's happening to him and maybe he's not aware of. But again, it's fairly short scene, very subtle, establishing that Ryan isn't all he seems to be. And that's when they decide that they've got to sort out Sergeant Wells and also fortify this place because they're stuck here now.
Yeah, so Cooper's going to do a bit of work on the Sarge to try and sort him out, and the rest of them, like you say, are busy fortifying the house and looking for extra weapons. And so I love how one of the things that Spoon finds is a fucking broadsword. It's just like there under the table. The only thing Terry can find is like a turkey trimmer.
Turkey trimmer. I love the juxtaposition between the two. So Spoon pulls out this sword that's bigger than he is and starts playing with it. And you've got Terry just opens the kitchen drawer and just sort of holding it limply in his hand with the power cord and just sort of staring at it. Just like, Oh, poor guy. And and then they're working themselves out. They take Sergeant Wells upstairs, but just before they do that, there's quite an important bit of dialogue for Megan, which I missed when I was younger. I didn't pay attention. I didn't catch it. She's trying to convince Cooper that it's werewolves, and Cooper's having none of it.
Mhm.
So I don't know what they are. I don't care what they are. They're the enemy, and he's trying to help Sarge out, and she says, "Did you come here for them? Are you here because of them? Are you here to get me out?" And then she says, and it's cut off because Sergeant starts screaming. She says, "I know how to kill them," which I missed multiple viewings. I missed it because it obviously you've got Sergeant Wells screaming because his guts are hanging out. But that actually sort of plays into what happens later on, or at least raises questions as to what her motivations are.
Yeah, because I mean, it's something like we'll talk a little bit more about when we get to that point in the movie. But yeah, her motivations in this film are a little bit cloudy, and I think it takes a bit of like unpacking to understand what she's actually trying to accomplish, because they do kind of go all over the place. Yeah. So it is an interesting one. But yeah, they go upstairs to operate on the Sarge because they've got to try and like stop this bleeding, and so they use super glue on him to basically glue his guts back. And as Cooper said, super glue, the reason it glues your fingers together better than anything is because it was developed to patch up soldiers, which isn't actually true, but it was. I think it was actually used for that on a few occasions because it does work so effectively.
I believe, again, hopefully, chat savior here, help me out if I'm wrong. I think that this line was a reference to another line that someone said in another fictional movie, whereby they were reading a werewolf book, and it said that in there someone's referenced using super glue to heal someone. So it's like there's a layer to it, that this is a reference to something else that happened in another movie. Again, I could be wrong, but obviously before they can operate on poor Sarge, they need to get him in the spirit. So
yeah, literally. So they get him drunk basically, and he's like, I'd forgotten about this scene until I rewatched the movie. But basically, they're trying to work on him, and he's screaming because it's so painful. And then he just says to Cooper, "I need you to hit me, knock me out." And so Cooper wallops him one, and you think he's done it, but then he springs right back up again. He's like, "Come on, don't be a pussy, fucking hit me!" And so he goes right in.
Oh yeah. Two very interesting things about that scene, which I found out. Firstly, Sean Pertwee was allowed to get drunk before that scene, so he is hamming it up a bit, but he was genuinely pissed. So when he's there, he's going, "I love you like a mate that I love. I'd let any of you marry my sister if I had one." It's like, it's generally good, but also that second punch from Cooper where he gets up connected.
Really?
That one did genuinely connect, and apparently Sean Pertwee was quite happy that he'd been drinking, because had he not been, it connected to the bottom part of his cheek. But yeah, the first one is a stage, but the second one did catch him just on the underside.
Shit.
And he sold it. He really did.
He did, yeah, because you'd think, you got hit by that, unless it knocked you out, you'd be like, fucking Christ, you really hit me. Yeah. But yeah, he just goes limp, completely motionless. So, wow, good stuff. I like the dialogue from Megan here as well, where she's, because before he knocks him out, the Sarge is doing that bit, like you say, where he's going, I love you, I love this guy. And Megan just says, like, here, you talk to him, I'll stick, you two bond.
Yeah.
I just love that line.
Trying to sort him out, because obviously the Sarge is not only drunk, but he's resisting them doing anything to him. He's moving around, he's squirming about because his guts are hanging out. And then between whiskey, super glue, and a punch, they actually managed to fix up the Sarge, at least temporarily.
Yes, so yeah, he's out for the count for now, but they've glued his guts back together. So hey, great job. And so I think now this is a bit of a time where they're preparing for the next werewolf attack. And
it's Spoon and Joe are in the living room, and this is where he references Rourke's Drift, Zulu.
Yeah, from the movie Zulu, which is, they probably didn't need to reference it specifically. We would have maybe got it just from the things that actually happen in the film. But I'm fine that they're talking about
I
it.
think considering Spoon also references the Kobayashi Maru, I think that's sort of in line with his character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like he's meta, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He would bring in, oh, this is like this movie. And obviously, it doesn't happen. It's not like a consistent theme, but I just think it does sort of tie in with. He did mention the Wrath of Khan, obtusely, yes, but he did mention it. So, and it's just Joe's response is like, "You're bloody loving this, aren't you?"
Yeah, he totally is, though.
Spoon is loving this.
Spoon is just up for any sort of violence or war or anything like that. He's just there, and it's great to see him. He keeps fighting right till the end, and he goes out like an absolute boss.
When we get to what happens to Spoon, which won't spoil too much, which I'm generally looking forward to, I'm expecting F's in chat.
We need to pay respects to Spoon.
We need to take a minute. I'm gonna take a minute if you don't mind.
We'll just have to go silent. I think
we'll have to go silent for Spoon, but obviously we're not quite there yet. They're the second attack sort of it slowly starts this time. You see Spoon is in the passageway from the front and back door, and one door handle is being turned, then the one behind him is being turned, and there's a little bit more build up to this one as opposed to just banging through the door, which I quite enjoy.
But yeah, so I always got a kind of Jurassic Park vibe to this scene. That bit where they've got a raptor coming through and they're trying to reach the shotgun that's just out of reach, and I think that happens to him where he's changing mags and he drops the mag on the floor and he's like, I can't reach it because I've got to stay with the door. So everyone ends up like in a big firefight with these werewolves that are trying to break in, and they're coming in through the windows and stuff. They're breaking in through the doors, and I just love how they use fucking everything at their disposal on these things. Like they're pouring pots of boiling water on them. They're hitting them with hammers. I think Cooper swings one like with the broadsword and slices one of their arms off.
In terms of, we said that I don't think there's much in this movie that the characters do that seems illogical. But just after the Terry vomits on Ryan after the initial attack, after you see his reaction, Cooper tells him to get all the pots they can full of water and on the boil because they need weapons. And also, then following that, just to prove that this movie is 110% British, he just says, "Oh, and we could all do with a brew."
Yeah, get some tea on.
Get some tea on. That fight scene, that's got some of the bits that it does sort of elevate it into being comedy. Some of the moments, it's very serious, a lot of things happening, but you've got Spoon trapped against the door with the wolf in the small window above him, and then Cooper comes along and chucks the boiling water in his face, and the first thing that Spoon does is spring back up, grab the empty pot, and just start whacking it. It's just I just can't stop. And then a few seconds later have you got those moments in movies where you don't know if it's supposed to be funny, but every time you see it, you can't help but laugh?
Yeah.
It's really simple. He's banging nails back into the door. Boom.
Yeah, and he just starts hitting the hand.
And the hand comes through the letterbox, so it's just boom, 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 boom. It's just it doesn't stop. It's just a real quick shift onto that. I've had brilliant. Actually, saying Joe's in trouble in the living room.
Yeah, so he gets caught. Like he's trying to reload his gun, like his shotgun, and one of the werewolves reaches in through the window behind him and grabs his webbing. So he's like getting strangled by it. He can't bring his gun up to shoot it. And he's just like randomly firing into the walls, and I think that's when Cooper comes in and slices its arm off with the broadsword. And you just, Joe's there with this arm still attached to his collar, and he just goes, "Cheers, mate."
It's so nonchalant. It's almost like Cooper just bought a pint to him.
Yeah,
it could have been that. It could have been, "Cheers, mate." I just found that.
I love that as well when Joe's like firing at a werewolf that's coming in through the window, and he's advancing towards it, just pumping shotgun shells into it. It gets right up to the window, and then its arm just comes in and grabs the gun, and you just see him go, "Oh shit!" He drops down, and it fires a shot like at him, like through the window, and then it just drops the gun on top of him.
I think I didn't do the count, but I think that was the last shell in the gun, and clearly the wolf was like, "Okay, I don't know what to do with this now," and just yeeted it back in through the window.
Yeah. Interesting as well. You know how Terry's armed with like a semi-automatic
Yeah.
rifle.
What's he
Quite
armed
an
with?
old-fashioned gun. I don't
It
think you
is,
really
yeah.
get them in the British Army, but he keeps having to like work the mechanism on it.
Yep.
It's because the blank shells that they were using weren't powerful enough to cycle the firing mechanism, so you couldn't just keep squeezing the trigger. It kept jamming,
Is that
basically.
where
And
they don't? Yeah, because they stopped using that gun pretty much after that scene. I don't
yes,
think
and
we
it's
see it
because
again.
it was such a pain in the arse to work with. Apparently,
Yeah.
that like the blanks, like I say, they just weren't enough to keep it going. So you had to keep unjamming it, and it just looked shit on screen. So the MP5s were fine. They just used them for the rest of the movie.
And I think it makes sense if they had to work with it that Terry had that gun because he's obviously just generally incompetent as it is. So
Yeah,
you might be able to sell it that way, I suppose. But oh no, that's I mean, British movies and guns don't usually go together, so we're not looking maybe as much as our friends across the pond would at things like that.
yeah. They would know more about the weapons involved than I would. But
Certainly.
yeah, that's when Terry gets killed. Basically, when
Does,
he's
yeah.
like he's killed or he thinks he's taken out one of the werewolves and driven it off, and then he's just stood next to the window and he just goes, "Dogs, more like pussies," and then it just grabs him and pulls him outside, and then that's him killed.
It does something very similar to the scene at the beginning, whereby you expect him to turn around, say the line, and then get grabbed because that's the standard fare, isn't it?
Yeah,
But the blinds come down, and you think, oh, it's a subversion, it's a jump scare. It's just like whenever you open the cupboard and it's a cat sort of
yeah,
deal.
yeah,
But then it comes through and grabs him, and just
yeah.
sort of drags him off. And Megan runs to the window, and just stares out with a rather interesting look on her face. I've never quite understood.
Well, yeah,
There.
and she leans against the window frame, which is all broken, and gets a big shard of glass impaled in her hand.
Yeah.
And she just kind of stares at it like she didn't even notice the pain or anything. So it's an odd one, and it's like I guess knowing what we know about this character, it's like the two sides of her kind of vying for control. The werewolf side that's enjoying what she's seeing, and the human side that's appalled by it.
There's definitely something going on with her. I mean, she doesn't say anything. Right? No words come out of her mouth. She is clearly shocked. I think maybe a bit of guilt.
It could be.
Potentially. I mean, she is essentially the reason why they're there. I mean, beyond obviously Ryan and they were putting that, but physically in that house.
Yeah.
She could have saved them. She could have sent them away.
Yeah.
But needed them. So
that
attack.
And I think does this attack not kind of culminate with them going upstairs and
yes,
intruding on the Sarge?
Thank you. Thank you very much for reminding me of that. I was because very similar attacks happen throughout the movie.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fight. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of times that the werewolves assault this farmhouse to break in, and they keep driving them back, but their resources get more and more depleted as they go. But yeah, they realised that since they couldn't get in on the ground floor, they might have tried to break in upstairs with where the Sarge is. And I think that's when Cooper gets up there just in time to see like 2 or 3 of them in the room with him.
Yeah. So you've got one coming into the window, and this is where I think this is the first time you see one fully in proper light, or in an open space, not obscured by anything. And it's slowly moving over, and obviously Cooper's gone running upstairs to save the Sarge, but he's been caught by one in the window.
Yeah.
And he starts whacking it in the head with the sword. That's one of those moments where it does look a bit off again, because they couldn't make the animatronics for the heads that lifelike. Obviously, you had multi millions, then you could make it do whatever you want. But they're using what they've got, and I'd say they do it brilliantly. I'm not saying this is a negative on the movie. I'm just saying it's one of the things that you notice. He eventually gets rid of the werewolf that's holding onto him through the window, but then he grabs a camera and starts taking pictures, a professional camera with a large flash on it, which actually works at blinding the werewolf, which again makes sense. They have eyes adjusted to see in the dark, and I'd imagine a bright flashy light would probably be quite disorientating. Creature like that.
No, it does work, and they use it throughout the movie to try and like disorient them. And obviously, it pays off right at the end because the film on these cameras is actually there. Remember when cameras had film in them and they weren't digital? You know, crazy days.
Do you remember the panic you get when you open the back and you thought you'd exposed them all? And
Yeah, it's like, shit, I've lost everything.
I have a box in the loft and it's got 3 reels in, and I, for the life of me, don't know what's on them.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified. I'm terrified to actually get them processed because they might have been at Weekends Way in Amsterdam from my youth.
Well, yeah, so then it's like, say no more. That's the thing. Like, back in the day, you couldn't take really embarrassing pictures because some real person had to develop the film for you, and they were going to see everything.
Yeah, down the pharmacy. Yeah, down the
totally.
Round our way, it was at the pharmacy, and you just sort of go in there and imagine what they'd seen.
Yeah, I've seen things. I've seen things.
They come to the front desk just shaking like that. To be fair, they're quite lucky. They can get the prescription for the PTSD there.
Yeah, so, exactly. It's everything they
positives.
Need. Yeah. So Cooper's trying to wake up the Sarge because he's still passed out from his from his knockout. And, you know, I love how all the gunfire and stuff downstairs didn't wake him up, apparently. But Coop yelling at him is enough to finally get him up. Like, suddenly everyone just gets their guns at the same time. Like, the Sarge has got an MP5 and a pistol at the same time, and they just, like, lay into these werewolves, absolutely, like, fill them with lead, you know?
It goes flying out the window, which, again, because you don't see the bullets do any sort of damage to the actual werewolf, but it does send it out the window, so it does give you the impression that, you know, guns can hurt them, but it's not really doing much to them apart from driving them off.
I think, just it causes them pain because you do hear them howling in pain at times, but it's not enough to kill them as such.
And I mean, it might lend a little bit of credence, but obviously if the bullets aren't going through the flesh, then it's imparting all of its force on the wolf. So if anything, that would actually, because when you get shot, the reason why you don't fly backwards is because it's going through you.
Yeah.
So again, that's just, obviously they just wanted the werewolf out of there, but I think it plays quite well.
It's one of the few movies as well where shotguns aren't depicted as like super powerful weapons that will like blow you through walls and stuff. Like in reality, they've got very little kickback to them. And so it shows that here where Joe's firing it, and it's barely even like recoiling against his shoulder because they're just not that powerful. And so it's the same with the werewolves. When they get hit, it will hurt them, but it won't like throw them like through windows or anything.
Because if you look through the course of that movie, that shotgun is pointless. It is the most, and I just think if you talk to Joe, and obviously you talked to Joe in the abstract sense, and just said, if you pop back to the special forces camp, I might have suggested getting any other gun, especially when they're running through the open field. And I'm just thinking, I'm not a gun expert, but at like 200 meters, I don't think the shotgun's really doing much, mate.
Yeah. They're fine up till about 30 paces away, and then they're just useless. Pretty much
useless. But great little scene, great bit of action happening, comedy mixed in there. Bit of setup happens. Spoon is trying to cover the door that the werewolf's been getting through, and quite rightly, the werewolf just reaches in and just sparks him to the floor.
Yeah.
He falls into a little wooden door, and out falls over a ginormous gas canister, which is
that's when this happens, isn't it? Yeah, it's like straight out of Jaws, like that scene where the gas cylinder almost lands on Quint, he rolls out of the way at the last second. But again, it's not just used for that one moment. Like the gas cylinders are used later to try and blow up what they think is the werewolf's den. So again, everything's got payoff to it,
and it makes sense. This is a very remote cottage that clearly lives off canister gas.
Yeah,
it's not contrived. A remote family would have this if they had gas appliances and heating.
Yeah,
straightforward enough.
Yeah, makes sense.
It does. They drive him off now. I'm just trying to think. So obviously Sarge is now slightly back with it. Yes, sorry. Just because again, there is, I wouldn't say a flaw with the movie, but because as we've said, they're in the similar rooms and similar things happen. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to keep track of what conversations happen when.
Yeah, no, I'm the same.
Because I was going to say after a werewolf attack, but obviously that could be any point. So I'm just
the film is essentially like it's a series of like attacks and then quiet spells before the next one. And that's when you get the character moments, and like that's when they start to learn more about like what they're facing and what like Ryan's involvement is, and like how everyone ties together, basically.
So I just had a quick quick Gandalf at my notes. And so this is where Megan tells them that Terry's been taken, and they're all like, well, we've got to go and get him back, as you expect. And Ryan just doesn't talk him out of going, just tells him that he's dead. Terry's gone, which Cooper accepts, which I think, again, makes sense. As much as he loves his friend, I don't think he's suicidal. I don't think he would have led his squad outside. And this is when Megan brings up the fact that there's an old Jeep in the garage.
Yeah, so the plan is that they're going to try and take this if it works, and they're going to use that to drive out of there. So they need one person to cause a diversion, and then Joe, I think, who knows how to hotwire it, will go out and get it and bring it up to the house so they can all get out and pile out of there. So obviously they use Spoon. They're like, we need something small and fast and loud, and they all look to him, and he's like, because he obviously wasn't paying attention, he's like, you what?
You what, mate? And everyone looks at him. Like, even Ryan is looking at him. Even the special forces guy is looking at him. And it's such a great that is genuine comedy, because nothing needs to be said. Like, we need something fast and loud, and then it just starts almost turning.
I love as well when Spoon goes outside, causes a diversion, and then he's got to climb back into the house, and Megan's like, "Move your fucking arse, soldier!" And then when he gets back in, almost getting killed by a werewolf, he just goes, "I love it when a posh bird talks dirty."
Oh, he is again, Spoon. Every army needs a spoon. Every group of friends need a spoon. Do you know what? I don't think there's a situation in life that wouldn't be improved by having a spoon with you.
Spoon is the kind of guy who could help you out in most situations. Anything that involves fighting or hurting people, he's well involved.
If you've been too handsy with Tatiana, he'll sort out the doorman while you make an escape out the back. He's your boy, Spoon.
There's no such thing as too handy with Tatiana, trust me. Joe goes out and hotwires this Jeep that's in the barn, and it's an old rusty piece of crap, but drives it up to the house, and then he's stopped waiting for the others to get on board, and then just see like the breath coming from behind him. It just mists in the air, and you just see that realization on his face, like, you're right behind me, aren't you?
Yeah.
And Joe, being who he is, he just turns around and he's like, I'm gonna fucking have you.
Yeah,
just completely destroyed.
Just before, unfortunately, Joe when he gets to the car, he turns the headlight on and he sees Terry. There's a wolf. There's a werewolf holding Terry. Bit of a cheap scene though. Terry's still alive, obviously very heavily injured, and the wolf just bites his head off, chucks it onto the Jeep, so you get this fake head just sort of bouncing around on it. So, and then again, as you described it, Joe's ending, I thought was really done, because you'd had all the fast pace of once Spoon gets back inside the house after causing the distraction, the wolves have managed to get hold of the rope he used and have pulled it, and the rope tied to the bed has pinned them all in against the wall. So they've got a wolf coming in, you've got the loud music happening, it's all going, and then you just cut back to Joe, and it's not even a long, it's a few seconds, it's just quiet, and then you just see the breath just going past him, and Joe's just realization on his face. But like you said, he just turns around and goes, "I'm gonna fucking have you." And very cliched, but Jeep rocking, few grunts, and then catch up everywhere.
We just spray of blood right all over the windscreen. It's great. And so when the rest of them pile outside to get into the Jeep, like, he's dead, and there's a werewolf in there, and I think it's Megan who shoots it before they bar the door. And I think this is the real low point in the movie. Like, it's weird because everyone's sitting around completely dejected. And I think that's when, like, Megan plays on the piano there. And I always assumed that was a Blade Runner reference, like when Rachel plays the piano in Deckard's apartment. I'm pretty sure it's even the same tune that she plays, but I could be wrong. Chat can correct me if I'm wrong on this one. But I always assumed that's what the reference was. And you see each of the characters they look kind of beat at this point. Yeah. They don't know what to do.
It is a good... They do tend to blend quite well between action, talking, it almost formulaic, which doesn't necessarily mean bad.
There's also and there's also the scene where they question Ryan.
Which is which is quite important for well, not only for the story, but it's been established. Ryan's been making comments, being passive aggressive, and just being difficult this whole time. At one point, Cooper has checked his wounds, and his wounds are gone. This is just before going for the Jeep. So they've tied him up because they don't know what's going on. They don't understand the situation. Ryan is just being very difficult to look after. And then they have established that Megan and Ryan have met before, and that Ryan contacted Megan regarding the werewolves.
Yeah, so basically he reveals that he's part of a special ops team who wanted to, they knew about the existence of the werewolves and they wanted to capture one because they figured that they could turn it into some kind of weapon. And so his team was sent up here. You find out that they were going to use Cooper and his squad as bait to lure the werewolves out, and then they were going to ambush them. Obviously not caring whether the squad lived or died, and it all went tits up because they didn't know how many there were going to be.
And it's set up and payoff. The reason why Cooper's team was there was because Cooper attacked Ryan in the opening scene during his selection.
Yeah, he's held a grudge against them, hasn't he?
He did say when Cooper attacked him, he said, "I do not forgive and I do not give second chances." Yeah. So there's, in a movie, I say a movie like this, I don't mean to sound as if I'm sort of looking down on the genre. But what I mean to say is they didn't have to do that. They could have just been, you're 6 soldiers, training exercise, there you go, dogs, werewolves, have fun.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do it in movies and it just doesn't work. But this works perfectly. Cooper made a mistake, I suppose would be one way you're looking at it. And this is the cost of that mistake. There was Ryan had to pick a squad that he wouldn't mind having out there as bait. And he just remembered his interactions with Cooper and went, all right, yeah, that bloke who hit me, we'll send his lot in there.
Yeah,
it's quite good. And Sergeant Wells is back up and running now, looking a lot better, and he's down there as well, shouting at Ryan, very angry, obviously, because it's his boys.
Yeah, well, that's his thing, is that he's he's still the leader of the squad, and he takes personal responsibility for all of these guys. So everyone that's lost is like his fault in his mind, and so he's clearly mad at Ryan. But I think that's when Ryan begins to change, because he they figure out that he's infected with this thing, just like the others. He's turning into a werewolf himself, and that's when you see like his eyes start to change color and stuff, and then he disappears behind a table, I think. Yeah,
you live and learn, which is what he said to Cooper at the start.
Exactly, yeah, like another callback to the start.
And just for this kicked off as well, and I only mention this again, and I don't mean to backtrack, but because setup and payoffs happen a lot, actually, obviously not as much as like Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead, but there are a few. When Cooper is interrogating Ryan as to what happened, he's do you like football? And Ryan said, like, oh, you think it's all over and all that shite? No, I don't. And he's there saying that Joe loved football and now Joe's dead. I want to know why Joe is dead. Why is he up here? And that sort of kicks off the conversation, and that has a minor payoff towards the end. But when Ryan's changing, obviously he falls conveniently behind the table at the other end, just where the camera can't see it happening, which is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a mark of the limited budget that they couldn't do an epic transformation scene like American Werewolf in London or anything like that, which would have been cool, but they probably didn't need
stages. They do stages. His eyes change, his teeth change. You can see he's got claws on his hands, or his nails have elongated. They do enough that you know what's happening.
Yeah. And I love how I think it's Spoonie who just shoves a fucking sword right through him as the werewolf.
That's Cooper. That is Cooper.
Yeah,
it's Cooper. So he springs up from behind the table, this huge werewolf, and Sean Pertwee's character Sarge just goes, "Bad dog," and then he reaches for the nearest thing to him, which is just this little stick, and you see this moment of realization. He's staring at it. He just goes, "Fetch," and just throws it across. Across the way, and then it all kicks. So he's fighting with Cooper and Sarge, and Spoon's in the corner like, oh, I've got a shot. And that's when Cooper drives the broadsword straight through him, and Ryan just bombs out the window and it's gone.
Yeah, which is obviously done so that you can recognize, like at the end of the movie, that is Ryan, like because he's got the sword right through him. But just nice little touch. It gives you that usage of the sword. And so I think that's when they get the idea that they will they'll go and look at the Jeep that Joe was driving because they still think they can escape with it. I think they realize, because it's kind of a quick bit of dialogue, but basically it's fucked. Like it's leaking petrol and it's losing oil and stuff, and so it's not going to be able to get them, like, you know, a 4-hour drive. It wouldn't be able to get them to civilization. Instead, they load the gas canisters into it and they drive it into the barn where they assume that's where the werewolves are hiding out.
They don't assume, mate.
Megan tells them,
Megan, there's a scene, and again, unfortunately, because it does sort of blend together, there is a scene where Megan's looking out the window and the wolves are looking at her, and it's just quite a few seconds. She looks at the barn, looks at them, and first time watching, you can maybe assume that she's thinking, oh, they're staying in the barn, because she describes the wolf pack as being 5 to 6 members, 1 alpha male and 1 beta male, which mirrors the squad, Wells, Cooper, Spoon, etc. Good. And she's the one who tells them that if the wolves are nearby hunting, that they're likely to be all in the barn because it's warm and dry. So as you were saying,
so they drive the truck in. I think they punch a couple of holes in the fuel tank, so they got a trail of fuel, light it, and then the barn just goes up in spectacular fashion. So they think that they've done it, but obviously they haven't. And I think that's what leads then into the Megan's change. I think she basically admits to Cooper that she misled him, and she's like, there was nobody in that barn.
This scene has always confused me and always will, and I think there's maybe a scene or two missing between Megan and Ryan. Megan and Cooper.
Yes, this is where I think we have to talk about like what Megan's plan actually was and what her motivation was.
So they as you're saying, so they drive. Cooper drives the Jeep into the barn with the gas canisters in. One thing I do find quite funny is Spoon's there playing with the matches. They won't light. And then Sarge just appears behind him in slow motion with a Molotov cocktail, just hurls it at the ground. I do find that quite a little bit funny. Just like Spoon there frantically trying with matches, then all of a sudden just Sarge just yeeting a bottle on the floor and everything goes up.
It's like you should probably just led with that in the first instance.
You know? I mean that would have been a better opening than cliched match. So all blows up. They come in. He turns around and Megan's right in front of him, really, really close to distance. And she starts apologizing, and she starts saying that I'm really sorry. There were no. Well, Cooper works out there were no wolves in the barn, and they just blew it up. And then she starts. I mean, what's your take on it, Drinker?
Okay, so the gist is that Megan admits to him that she's one of the werewolves. She's been trapped here, and what she tells them is that she hoped that these guys would have been able to get her out of there, and so she was willing to try and help them. But when it became apparent that they weren't going to be able to help her, she's decided to betray them and let the rest of the werewolves attack them, basically. And she's been undermining them this whole time. And so, the question is like, well, why is she doing this? And as far as I understand it, she probably came up to this part of the Highlands genuinely trying to do research, trying to learn about like biology or whatever it is she's doing. Got infected with this virus or this lycanthrope thing that they talk about. So she became like one of the pack, and I think they were probably holding her as some kind of unwilling prisoner in this place. So you've got a degree of freedom, but if you try and leave, we'll hunt you down and kill you, or whatever it might be. And so she was desperate for a means to escape, but she needed someone who could actually rescue her and get her out. And so when she first met the soldiers, she probably assumed that they could do that. And when it became apparent that they couldn't, she was willing to betray them to stay on the good side of the pack, and keep her loyalties with them. That's what I take it to mean.
I'll follow that as well. I mean, it does conflict slightly with the fact that she'd worked with Ryan, and I know I probably failed to mention it earlier, but when they first find Ryan, he keeps screaming that there was only meant to be one. They didn't know how many werewolves they were. And if Megan had been working with Ryan and she was hoping to get out of that situation, surely she might have told them, there's actually 6.
No, it's interesting. People in chat are saying that some people in chat believe that she got infected when she touched the window glass that had werewolf blood on it. So she literally only got infected with
I thought that was when I first watched it again many moons ago. But she says that she came out there 2 years ago to be closer to nature, and she didn't choose to be part of this family. And the reason, and there's a line in there, the reason that she's not in the photo is because she took it. Because
yes.
they look at this family photo when they have a moment during in the gaps between the seas, they work out that they're in the house, that this is their house, the werewolf's house, when they're in human form. And Cooper says the reason you're not in the photo is because you took it. So it does suggest that she's been connected with them for some time. So I believe that she's been a werewolf for a while. At least a couple of years.
That is my understanding as well. And like I say, I think she was kind of held there against her will. She wanted to escape, but she didn't know how, and she needed someone who she thought could get her out. Maybe she initially thought Ryan could, and then it became obvious he wanted to capture them. And so she probably helped to mislead his team so that they got killed. And so, maybe she thought Cooper and his guys were going to be the ones. But again, she betrays them. So that's my understanding. So I don't think the glass was anything to do with infecting her. I think that was just an incidental thing.
And clearly she's been holding off transforming because she does eventually sort of change. And when she's talking with Cooper about what's happening, I know we've got hopefully someone mentioned it in Super Chat, but before we come to the end, Sean Pertwee had another great little chat with Cooper before it all sort of kicks off, before the gas canister attack. And hopefully we can revisit that when we get to Super Chats. Some of the lines that Cooper says to Megan, though, are really odd. I find them odd. He's when he's talking to her, it's like, "Oh, new woman, same old shite," and they have a bit of back and forth about his trust issues with women, and they haven't had that conversation throughout the movie. So I think maybe there was a scene where they talked about maybe Cooper had issues because he'd been betrayed in a relationship, and I know he mentioned women were one of the things he was terrified of. That's really jarring to me, how he's there all of a sudden, she's there going, being nice to women will get you killed, and it's like, oh, being nice to women won't get you anywhere, being nice to me will get you killed. It's like, I know you think all women are bitches, but I'm the real thing.
Like, I assume that was just in service of the pun there, rather than there being much lead up to it. I think it was just so they could get as many dog jokes in there as they could. I could be wrong. Maybe there are scenes that were deleted later or whatever, but that's what I took it to mean.
Yeah. And then we find out that she's let them in.
Yes, she's let them in. You see them right behind her, and then she starts to transform. And I love throughout her little monologue there, you just see the Sarge loading up a gun. He's got one round left in the pistol. Yeah. And he's just as she's starting to change, he just puts one right in her head and kills her.
Does he kill her though? Because
it's hard to tell, because I'm never quite clear on the numbers of werewolves that you see, because they tend to come in like 2s or 3s, so you never quite know how many there are in total.
I did take a look at some of the things, and there's conflicting information I can find about it. It says some people say there's a werewolf that's missing an eye in a later scene, which suggests it's her, but then there should be a werewolf missing an arm, and you don't spot that, or at least you can't make out that there's one missing. But all hell kicks loose, and they get separated, and I'm not sure which order. It cuts between Spoon, who gets trapped downstairs, and Sergeant Cooper, who've gone upstairs. And I don't know how you want to do this drink, but I think if we just stick to on one of them, because it cuts between the two so much.
Yeah, what I would probably do is we'll talk about Spoon first.
Yeah, and then, we have to talk about our boy Spoon. We have to talk about our boy Spoon.
God bless him.
It's
this
too
guy
soon.
Puts up
I'm not ready yet.
Yeah, this guy puts up the mother of all fights.
It's just fantastic. So he's not a big chap, is he? Maybe he's like 5'4", It doesn't.
Spoon's a little guy, but you know, it's one of those perfect examples of like it's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the fight in the dog kind of
Yeah,
thing. And like he's right in there.
yeah.
He goes at it with everything he has, like hits them with like frying pans. I think my favorite bit is when he boots it with his foot, and you
Yeah.
just see one of its teeth go flying across the room and impale into the
Yeah.
wall.
So he's obviously he's trapped in the kitchen. He's realised he's in trouble, and he just opens up with boxing it, which is fantastic. And he ducks and he bobs and he weaves and he cracks it, and you can tell that the wolf is being affected by it. It's not reacting. Obviously, it's much bigger and stronger, but it is feeling it being punched in the ribs. And then he just moves on to every kitchen implement and everything else.
Yeah.
And then he grabs the infamous frying pan and channels his inner Bruce Lee.
Yeah. I just love how he's got it above his head. And he's like,
Yeah, like that, holding up, brings that, and then he's definitely stabbing it over and over again. He's like, come on, you fucking
yeah, because he's
all over
like
his
he
face.
is going for this thing, and he's
This is
covered
the
in
fight
blood
of
from
his
like
life.
stabbing it so many times because he probably knows he's fucked. He's going to
Yeah.
die, but he's just like, determined to go out like he's going to go down swinging.
Like a
And
champ.
when he finally gets overpowered, and it pins him up against the wall, and its face is like just a few inches from him, he spits his chewing gum right at it, and he's just like, "I hope I give you the shits, you fucking wimp." You know?
That is the end of Spoon, and I might say it wasn't the one he was fighting that got him. It's the second one.
Yes,
they had to. You had to send in 2 werewolves to take out 1 Spoon.
This was a 2 werewolf job to take down Spoonie.
Dirty. They played dirty, and it's just fantastic. Just would not give up.
So in chat, like press F for Spoon. Not even just to pay respects, just press F for Spoon.
Yeah.
There we go. F to Spoon.
Yeah, the time has come.
God bless him. Anyway,
amazing.
So he goes out like a boss, and then it's back to like the Sarge and Cooper. They're the last 2 left alive, and they've been like separated again. Like the Sarge is in a bathroom, Cooper's in like a bedroom just further along the hall. And again, another brilliant reference to Zulu, where the fight in the hospital happens, where they have to use their bayonets to carve their way through walls to escape. Exactly the same. Holy shit, there's a lot of F's there for Spoon.
Rightfully so. There can't be enough. Because they're separated. So Cooper's in a bathroom, but and I grew up in a house like this. There's just an upstairs toilet, and that's where the Sarge is, because he sat on the toilet bowl.
Yeah.
And he with his feet up against the door. And I know I mentioned this before. It's the delivery, and I'm sure I won't be able to do it properly, but he's got a glow stick in his mouth.
Yeah.
And you can hear Cooper just saying, Sarge, where are you? And Sarge puts his feet up and he goes, I'm in the Kazi. And then the wolf starts banging the door, I'm in the Kazi. Just screaming, I'm in the Kazi. And God bless it, if I ever meet the legend that is Sean Pertwee, I'm just going to ask him to say it for me. That's all I want. All of these amazing actors have to recant some of the best lines in movie history, but I just want Sean Pertwee to scream, I'm in the Kazi in my face.
It's such a quotable movie, this. There's so many great lines from it.
I'm hoping the super chats will just remind us of all the ones that I've obviously forgotten.
And it's great how resourceful they are as well. Like, the Sarge is in there, he puts his gun away, and he's got like a can of deodorant or whatever. He lights it on fire and uses it as a flamethrower when a werewolf tries to burst through the door. And so he's flaming it, and you just hear him go like, "Go away!"
I love it. He just sounds so annoyed and British at that point, because he starts off being, "Oh, I fucking have you," and then like when it's running out, he goes, "Go away!" He just flame is hitting this. It's exceptional. So Cooper manages to escape the bathroom by breaking through the wall and ends up in this smaller toilet area with Sarge, and they both break into this bedroom, and for some reason decide to hide in the closet together.
Yeah, it's a strange thing to do for 2 men.
Yeah. Why not?
But yeah, I think that's when you see that there's skeletons and stuff on the floor. Like, this is like a proper house of horrors.
I did love that, because up to this point you got the idea that they were normal people and then they were werewolves separately. But this clearly sees that they live both lives. All that reminded me because they're both in the closet. It's dark in there, and they drop glow sticks and it lights up all all the bones and the skeletons on the floor. And all it reminded me of, I'm sure this happened to you when you were younger. You've been sent to your room to clean it, and then an hour later, footsteps of parents came up the stairs. So the best tactic was to shove everything in the bottom of the wardrobe.
Yeah.
It gave off that vibe. It was like everything had just been piled in there, and then obviously mouth open, watch the ears, mind the toes.
Yeah, and he just fires his the last of their ammunition through the floor to like break through the ceiling, and then they fall down into the kitchen again. And that's when you get the great line of "Oh, where's Spoon?" And the Sarge, he goes and gets his watch back from this pile of guts that's lying on the floor. That's all that's left of him, and you just get there is no spoon.
Yeah, a Matrix reference.
Yeah, exactly.
I assumed it was deliberate.
Oh yeah, because this movie came out like a year or two after The Matrix, so it would have been red hot.
Yeah, I have to assume it was deliberate. But again, they're stuffed. They've done everything they can. They fought really hard, but they're back in, and obviously they know the kitchen isn't safe because there's bits of Spoon everywhere. So
it's only a matter of time until these things break through and get to them again. So I think that's when the Sarge realizes, because he's starting to change himself. He realizes the game is up, and all he can do now is try and take them out, and gets Cooper to safety. So I think Cooper goes down a trapdoor into the basement underneath.
Yep.
The Sarge seals the hatch closed and like opens up the gas mains that are there. It's like planning obviously to blow himself up, and that's when they break into the room. And I think, like I said earlier, that's the only slightly goofy scene where like you get a bit too much time with the werewolves. Like they're on screen a bit too long, and they're doing the whole like.
They take a bit longer to get. Yeah, they take a bit longer to get to him than they really should. It's like they're just slowly marching. But again, the Sarge, like a boss.
Yep.
It's time to go.
Yeah, because he's gonna use a lighter initially, and they knock that out of his hand, and then he just smacks his fist against the gas ignition thing on the cooker, and then boom, like the whole place just goes up, and that's your money shot right there, like the whole house just exploding.
There's the budget.
Yeah, and so Cooper's in the basement. He manages to survive this blast because he's underground, and that's when he's about to leave. When, wouldn't you know it, one last stinger, Ryan shows up. And you get a great line from Cooper where he's like, "Ryan, you figured out how to lick your balls yet?"
Oh, I forgot you don't have any.
Yeah. Did you notice though, like, because he's still got the sword impaled right through him, he pins Cooper up against a post, and he's about to, like, he basically grabs him and he's trying to pull him into it, and the sword's like going into his mouth between his teeth.
I grimaced.
You just hear that. You hear that noise of like fingers on chalkboard sort of thing.
Yeah, I cover my. It's just when obviously everyone's got their things. Mine are nails and teeth in movie, and when you see that metal scraping against his teeth, it's audible. He's got Ryan pinned up, and then set up and pay off. The dog Sam comes in to save Cooper.
Yep, the dog that Ryan wanted to shoot.
Yep.
And it comes in, it distracts him long enough for Cooper to pick up the letter opener, which is like lying there. We should also mention, like, this is where the werewolves bring all their victims, because like some of their corpses are like lying hanging from the ceiling.
Actually, sorry, thank you for reminding me. Here's a fact that you'd appreciate. One of those, some of those corpses that are hanging up, which we'll talk about after what that really means for the family there, but they were used on the set of Event Horizon.
Yes, I fucking knew it. I knew they were. I knew I recognized them. I honestly, I had that feeling when I saw them. I was like, that's the floating guy with the frozen. Yeah.
When I found that out, and then obviously you and Event Horizon and that ominous noise that gets played every now and again, I was like, this is perfect fact. This is made for you.
That is, it's weird. I never knew it for sure, but looking at them, I was like, that looks familiar. It looks like from some of those hell scenes where they've got like corpses strung up. I'm really pleased that you've confirmed that for me. That's completed my life right now.
Oh, glad to be of service. All right. Well, it looks like this happy hour will be the final one. It's been great, everyone.
That's it. I don't need to do any more now.
Not exactly go out on a bang. Sorry, chaps, but I'm
done. I'll see you later.
Down with a whimper, mate. Down with a whimper. He stabs the werewolf that was formerly Ryan, and you can clearly see it's had an effect on him. being stabbed with silver.
Yeah, it kind of makes him mortal, I think. It takes away his invulnerability.
Yeah, he sort of doubles over and makes a weird noise as well, and set up for the final line.
Yeah, so he comes straight at Cooper, who manages to grab the pistol that I think there's got one round left in it. And you get that great, they think it's all over. It is now. And just
Bang.
Straight in. Yeah, kills him.
So as Ryan shot the dog at the start, thus he got shot himself.
Yeah. What a great setup and payoff throughout this movie.
There's so much. We've missed some. I'm sure
we probably have. Yeah, because there's so many, but I think we probably covered the main ones. But yeah, it's just such a pleasure to think such a well constructed script that has all this.
I
stuff
think
in
Megan's hand heals. I think Megan's hand heals because she isn't wearing a bandage in the last scene, which again suggests that she's again. You could if anyone hasn't seen this, please watch it. You're doing yourself a favor. Really, truly are. And then we come to the end, and this is probably a bit that I'm not sure how people outside of England or people who don't follow football or soccer would really appreciate it. You see the credits kick in, the music kicks off, and you see all these harrowing pictures that were taken from the camera during the movie of all these werewolves. And then you see a headline pop up, "Werewolves ate my platoon," and you've got a picture of Cooper there, clearly quite disheveled. And then it zooms out, and it's a very small section of the headline that says England 5, Germany 1.
Yeah.
Now that happened. And that
I was going to say that was a real game.
And believe it or not, that was September the 1st, I think, 2001. That was a full moon.
Wow. That's a great little detail.
Just the headline at the end is like "Werewolves ate my platoon," but it's just sort of buried under the fact that England had beaten Germany 5-1. Joe would have been happy if he'd lived. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. It's but yeah, like I say, everything, just all the things that are referenced throughout this film, they all tie together great, and they've all got payoffs to them as you go through it. And for a low budget horror movie about werewolves, you would never expect that level of attention and detail and just thought that went into it. And it's such a pleasure that they did it. I always love movies like this that are just better than they have any right to be. And I think Dog Soldiers is just a great example of that.
Yeah, that is The Descent, very similar. Same director, obviously, but no reason. I mean, the acting caliber in that. Again, this is more from memory. It's not one I've watched recently, but I remember being thoroughly entertained by it. You do get these little diamonds in the rough, don't you? These movies that are just done more out of passion. I think the director's tried for about 5-6 years to get this movie made.
Yeah.
Certainly a script he had on the burner for a while. The actors all seem to be invested in it as an actual project, as opposed to being, I think Teflon might be a bit of a strange word to use, but the American style of horror, where it's teens in the wood sort of thing. It was that was something actually. For a few years after, they floated the suggestion of a Dog Soldiers 2, and this was in the early days of the internet, so who knows if it's true, but they were going to make it an American cadet school. I was like, no.
Oh, God, no.
Even back then, I thought, no, because then it's just become an American teen horror movie. Nothing wrong with the genre, but it would lose everything that made Dog Soldiers the cult phenomenon that it is, because it is a cult phenomenon.
Yeah, very much so. And, I think this is a movie that you couldn't replicate. If you tried to do a sequel to this or whatever, you would just lose everything that made it so unique and interesting in the first place. But, it's like I say, it kind of shows you that you can do a hell of a lot with a very limited budget if you've got a good script and actors who are really invested in it, and a director who clearly had a lot of passion for it. Like you say, I think this was only Neil Marshall's second movie, so early in his career, he was obviously very hungry for doing this, and it really shines through in everything that's every aspect of it. And it's just, I've seen it a bunch of times. I rewatched it for this review, and got just as much entertainment out of it, like properly laughed out loud, like so many times, even though I kind of knew the things that were going to happen. It was just so well done. And I really appreciate that in films like this.
It's as I described. I mean, as the simple thing of Spoon banging the nails in, and then the hand comes through the letterbox, and without breaking pace, he's there just going, gets me every time. It
Yeah.
genuinely does. I can't, even when I think about it, when you get a smile, like a little wry smile when you think about it, it's the dialogue is brilliant. Sean Pertwee, he has a scene which I want to bring up now. It's just before the finale where he's handing over the responsibility to Cooper, and he's accepted the fact that he's healed. He looks down and all he's got are a few scars on his stomach.
Yeah.
And he's accepted the fact that he's a werewolf. And there's some funny dialogue mixed in where he's saying like, or maybe it's like I think it's a very good analogy given the analogy you made with Emperor Palpatine and the lightning and the lightsabers. Maybe when it's like having a piss, when you've got to go, you've got to go.
Yeah.
And Cooper retorts with, well, maybe it's like needing a shite. Just because you need one doesn't mean you drop your keks and pinch one off, which is quite funny. But they're discussing a very serious thing. And Sarge just looks at him and he delivers. Sean Pertwee just knocks out of the park. He's looking at him and he goes, the one thing they don't tell you about command is that sometimes the people you kill are your own.
Yeah.
And if you think about that in contrast to Ryan will gladly sacrifice men on his own side, doesn't care. Whilst Sarge accepts the fact that people have to die, but will do it at a final cost. So they both know the same thing is true, but they both come at it from polar opposites.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan's very much an ends justify the means kind of guy, whereas Sarge is much more human, and he's concerned about the safety of his men, and that's his top priority. So, but like I say, I think with the characters, like they're always consistent throughout the movie. Like when you get a person like one of these characters, you kind of understand how they'll react in any given scene, and they're always consistent in terms of what they want and how they deal with things. Just a really solid, well put together movie that's it's just an absolute blast, and I don't think it's terribly well known in America. But for you guys, if you can get a hold of it, I'm pretty sure I watched it off Amazon. Like you can get it pretty easy. Just look up Dog Soldiers, and it's just a great blast of a film. It's really enjoyable.
And if I know we discussed this beforehand because I was slightly worried that my accent might be a bit too difficult for some people to understand, like the scene in Hot Fuzz where they have to bring someone to translate the West Country accent. I was tempted to phone a friend and have an interpreter on standby should the cider take effect too strongly. This movie would be a nightmare to people who are not used to British dialect. Every character has an accent, really strong accent. Scott, the only Scott in the movie is Cooper. Then Sarge's London accent, I think broad London accent. Spoon, we think, is from Yorkshire. Joe's a Geordie. The only accent that I think doesn't really work is Ryan, because Liam. Oh, sorry, I forgot his name.
Cunningham, he's Irish.
Cunningham. He's Irish, and it comes out every now and again.
It really does, yeah.
It does. Whenever he's shouting, and when he says the phrase RTU, which is return to unit, it sounds so weird. It's because he says it with the Irish accent, and then breaks straight back into trying to be very posh British.
It's the same when he says when he's talking about Terry. Not Terry. Joe, I think, where he says, he's dead, Cooper, and you know it. There's a real like Irish twang to it. It's like, he's dead, Cooper, and you know it.
Oh yes, and then back to, what do you think it's all over and all that shite? It's like, it's clearly early on. Again, he does brilliantly, and his career, thankfully, gone on and gave us David Seaworth. So it all started at Dog Soldiers.
If there was one criticism I was going to give this movie, it would be, and it's a bit of a random one, but the sound mixing is really off in places. There's times when the soundtrack to it really overwhelms the dialogue. It really swells and gets really loud at certain points, to the point where you kind of miss what people are saying because it drowns out the dialogue. And I don't know why it happens. It just feels like it was like maybe a little bit hastily edited.
Actually, that's a good point, because I made a note that says that when they first start running from the werewolves, once they leave the Special Forces camp and Bruce decides to stay behind, the music really ramps up, but no one's speaking at that point. And that worked then because they're moving into a stressful situation and they're running. But yes, every time anything else happens, it just sort of overtakes the last sort of 2 sentences of dialogue and just goes, "Enjoy our theme tune." So,
Yeah, and it's annoying because it's just generic kind of soundtrack stuff. Like
it is.
it's
It's good
nothing too
enough.
special. Yeah, it's fine. It's dramatic and stuff, but like
Yeah.
it's not so great that I just want to hear that and not what the actors are saying. And I just think that's probably an example of like if the editing had been a little bit tighter, they would have picked up on it and just like dampened it down a little bit. But
Again,
yeah.
there's a few, like we noticed the helicopter doesn't look like a standard army. It doesn't mean it couldn't be. I'm not exactly sort of up to date with what they use, and certain elements of it, if you really look into it, you can see, it doesn't quite work. But in terms of the story, the characters, the humor, which is a very interesting type of humor, it's mostly the dialogue and how they interact with each other. There's very little physical comedy in terms of sort of like ridiculous things happening. So Shaun of the Dead, for example, the pool cue fight with John the zombie.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Which is amazing. But I see that as being completely different to say Spoon's fight with the werewolf.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's. Yeah, that's where Shaun of the Dead, like I say, it's got its roots in comedy and it verges into drama sometimes, whereas this is the opposite, but they both cross genres. I think the other thing is, you get subtler physical comedy, like where, like I was saying earlier, like Spoon kicks one of the werewolves in the face and it knocks its tooth into the pillar. Or, when he's hammering the nails into the barricade and then he starts hitting the werewolf claw as it comes in through the door above him. Just little things like that. It's all physical comedy. It's just not slapstick. It's just things that like you would do in that situation, maybe.
Yeah. Well, another great example I always thought, when Cooper is trying to get out the bathroom to the toilet where Sarge is, one of the wolf puts its head through the door, and he's been using a tap that he smashed with a sink to dig in through the walls, and he just plants it in its head, and then blood starts coming out the faucet at the top, which isn't played for laughs, but you can laugh at it. It's almost
absolutely.
I don't want to sound too high-minded because I truly am not, but it's almost like the director is giving you the choice to find it funny or not, if that makes sense. It's like, here's the situation, you can take it seriously, like Spoon nailing the door shut. Something to put his hand through, of course he's going to hit it, but also it's funny if you want to find it funny. It doesn't tell you it's funny.
I think you've almost got the ability to do both at the same time, because it's a funny thing, but it's a fundamentally serious situation. Like with the tap thing, where Cooper is fighting for his life and he's using any weapon at his disposal, and so he slams it into the werewolf's head because that's what you might do if you were just desperate. So you can totally buy into it as a serious thing, but then like you say, you've got the blood coming out the top of the tap. Whether that could happen, I don't know. But like, it's funny, but it could. So you can laugh at it, but you're still rooted in a serious situation which is going on. So I think you can definitely do both at the same time. But that's what's so clever about the movie, is that it never goes into the truly absurd, where you would never get to this movie and think, no, I'm just checked out of this because it's so ridiculous. No, I just don't care anymore. You're always invested in it. Because it's just it's walking that fine line between funny moments and serious survival moments,
I think that's where using real models and not CGI pays off as well. I'm invested in it. They're interacting with these creatures.
Yeah.
They look like a threat, and they slowly build up. When you finally see the werewolves sort of standing tall, you're aware of how dangerous they are, because people have already died. They're already quite a threat. If you maybe just saw those stood out in the middle of a field in broad daylight, you definitely wouldn't go that close to it, but I don't think you'd feel necessarily threatened by it. So they build them up again quite well, and it's such a well-crafted story, considering it didn't have to be. If you take the premise, 6 blokes, army, training, werewolves, attack, hold up in house. That's what there we are. You don't have to do anything. It's I think in direct contrast to, say, Army of the Dead, which I was actually looking forward to seeing because I loved Dawn of the Dead. the remake, and I thought, okay, Zack Snyder's wheelhouse, zombie movie, great, let's give this a go. And I just sort of just blanked my way through it. And I know you did your review recently, which is a really, really good review of it. Very, very condensed. But that army soldiers break into Vegas, break into Vault, get out before nuke. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, like when I compare them, I would struggle to tell you any of the characters' names from Army of the Dead, or to tell you, apart from maybe the safe cracking guy, who's really kind of like different from the
Just
rest.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
character.
like totally over the top. But yeah, apart from him, I couldn't tell you who anyone is, why they're there, or what like is unique about them. They're just all generic nobodies. I compare that to this movie where you, within 2 minutes of meeting them, you know who everybody is, you know, understand their personalities, their goals, their motivations, everything. That is the difference in writing. And this movie is, I think, an hour and 40 minutes. So, you know, nice, lean, mean movie, but it packs in a huge amount of stuff, a huge amount of character stuff, great action scenes done on a very tiny budget. You know, Army of the Dead is 2.5 hours long. It's an absolute slog. It's totally bloated. You know, just it's an example of like doing less with more somehow.
It's so really sort of, you've got two very similar projects, I suppose. You've got some key elements. You've got to build a story around it, and you can just tell because they've both added things, and you can tell where bad writing comes in and adds in the unnecessary daughter character, the bizarre break into a safe that's already owned by someone, the strange kid. All of those elements don't make it work. But with this one, Dog Soldiers, you have Cooper failing selection, and that's why his team was picked out to be disposable. The reason why they're after these animals, thankfully, it's not like Jurassic World with dinosaurs. These things would probably be useful in a war, but they didn't need to add those elements, but they work and they're crafted really well. And I just appreciate it. It's like you didn't have to do it. You could have pumped out a $2.3 million movie, made double the money back. Producers would have been happy, handshakes all round, enjoy a bit of Prosecco and walk home. It's just the effort. I like it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I did a review on Dog Soldiers like years ago. So really? before I became truly drunk. And you know, even then I was appreciative of how well crafted it was, but like to be able to talk in a bit more depth about it rather than just a 5-minute review, like it's been awesome to like revisit how good this film is.
Oh, it truly has. And like I said, I have missed half of the golden dialogue that this thing can produce. So thankfully, in one way I feel bad because I haven't remembered it, but in another way, anyone who's watched this and not seen the movie, there's still gold there in them hills, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Just take our word for it and go watch it, and like you'll have a blast. But this is the point in the stream where we usually do some super chats. So are you got enough time to be able to do a bit?
Well, I'm not going to be the first guest to ever walk away from super chats. I'm doing this for the chat. I am one of you.
Okay, yeah.
But if I might again just ask for a quick 5-minute reprieve, I just need to open a window, and it's stuffy here down south, and I just need to.
I got you, man. I'll crack on with them then.
Cheers, thank you.
Right, so Icanalis here says, "Hail Drinker and farewell Thunderchild. I hope I give you the shits." What a way to go out! Yeah, absolute respect to Spoon. He is awesome. Trenton Quinn says, "This movie is to werewolves what Jurassic Park is to dinosaurs. The special effects just go to show how practical is the way to go. I'll enjoy listening to this while grilling steaks. Break a leg, Thunderchild." Man, that's a pretty good evening to me, grilling steaks and talking about Dog Soldiers. RRTNZ says, "Drinker, you loquacious Lagavulin-fueled legend. We'd love to hear your analysis of Loki, but it's not worth your time. Instead, maybe check out Tropic Thunder or Dodgeball. Both comedies smarter than they appear. Cheers." Yeah, I've watched both of them. Both of them are absolutely fantastic. So, definitely would be happy to talk about both of those movies. Definitely Tropic Thunder as well. Robert Downey Jr. in blackface, that is a thing you would not be able to do nowadays. So I just give one a second because my phone is going nuts here and it's really pissing me off. Shut up. There we go. There, that's better. Stephen Otten says, "Thank you, Drinker and Thunderchild. Another movie that has earned its cult status. As my father said, it's Rorke's Drift with werewolves." Yeah, that is a pretty good description of this movie. Yeah, you're back, man. Someone in chat was also saying Army of Darkness is 100 times better than Army of the Dead. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No argument here.
I was going to say that's a very short conversation.
Yeah. I was talking. Someone was mentioning Tropic Thunder and Dodgeball, two movies that I should talk about. And yeah, absolutely, I'd love to talk about Tropic Thunder.
Oh, very, very similar, just different. So action in sports as opposed to horror.
Yeah. Ben Stiller in Dodgeball was fantastic.
Oh, and I'm going to start quoting Dodgeball actually, so you might want to move us on quickly.
Yeah, let's go. Trenton Quinn says, Jason Voorhees rules. Great to think the werewolves just home in on the smell of premarital sex. Yeah,
I noticed that as well. It's like they sniff the air.
Yeah,
someone's about to get some.
Yeah, we need to stop this.
It would have been a different movie if all of a sudden a condom just appeared coming through the opening in the tent like that with the werewolf's hands. Be safe, and then fair enough.
You need this. Stephen Otten says Cooper, fastest flashlight in North Wales. Yeah, indeed. It's a nice slow-mo chuck as well, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But it's straight out of a Mission Impossible movie.
Money.
Roger H gave me a thumbs up super sticker, so thanks, man. Stybeck B says 10 years old and Mass Effect trilogy still gets me. A gaming not woke storyline masterpiece. Go play the Legendary Edition. You will thank me later. Yeah, I'm fixing to do that actually because it's out now, so I'm going to do it. It's a Vaz Productions says, cheers to you and for retweeting my Haley Atwell meme the other day. Hey, yeah. That was awesome. Man, I've forgotten how hot Haley Atwell is. Like, they don't make them like that very often. Keep being
Excuse me, Drinker. I'm going to quickly go to my phone. There was talk of a hot woman on Twitter. So
yeah. You'll need to look up Haley Atwell. She plays Peggy Carter in Captain America.
Yeah. Oh yeah, given. Okay, I don't need my phone for that.
Yeah, I could think of a couple of reasons why she's so lovely. Tough request, lol, but do it anyways. I'll go away now. Yeah. Anthony Zuperin says, review suggestions from guys that were bugging you about The Expanse from day one. Interstate 60, Anonymous, Immortal, The Americans, Hell or High Water, and New Order. I've seen some of them, so yeah, it'd be interesting to talk about it. I really want to review Nobody, actually, because it's got Bob Odenkirk from Better Call Saul, and it looks really good. Mr. Blank says, the Critical Drinker, what you drinking, mate? Long-time fan from your first days in the USA. Thank you. I am drinking, at the moment, big bottle of Jack, because when you have it with Coke, it's the perfect thing for when you're live streaming. You need a bit of Coke to keep you awake, and you need the Jack to get you drunk. So,
and I tragically I am bringing the quality of the stream down slightly by sticking with an Irish import of Magner's Irish cider.
Well,
because it was on offer.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Fair enough. The cider I've quite come to enjoy is Henry Weston's because it's 9 or 10% or something. Like you're basically drinking a full bottle of wine when you drink it.
Yeah,
same level.
When that stuff first came out, obviously it was around my area quite a bit. I worked in quite a nice bar. I was a barman in my late teens, early 20s. And that was my end of shift drink of choice. Then it was Old Rosie, Catty, loads of variations came out. It was a dangerous drink. You'd sit down there, nice hot day, cold bottle. You'd have one, you'd have two, and then you'd stand up and realize that you've essentially drunk 2 bottles of wine without really twigging it. And then that moment of realization hit you.
Yeah, it's always when you stand up, isn't it?
Yeah. It's
like you're playing until then, and then it's like, oh shit, like that's when it hits you.
Dangerous. Cider's dangerous, especially Thatcher's Haze, which is my preferred in your local Witherspoons. Oh, spoon. Too soon, boy.
Yeah.
Too soon.
It's still too soon. It's 20 years later. It's still too soon.
It hurts, mate. It's one of those drinks. So you'll get the first round in and you'll drink it as if it's Ribena, and then you stand up because you're going to pop outside or pop to the loo, and then you just have that moment, and it's just sort of, I'm gonna have to just call it there, lads. Oh Lord, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, we've all been there, but like, yeah, a nice cold like can of cider on a hot day is just like the perfect thing. Can't go wrong with it. It's very satisfying. People were asking me in chat about Loki as well. I haven't seen the first episode yet. I'm actually like secretly dreading it.
I'm avoiding it. After WandaVision, which again I intrigued by the first few episodes, like genuinely interested, because I was I'm a bit worried about this, and I was fascinated. And then I became less invested. And then obviously the ending happened, and it happened. I'm sure you've seen it. And I saw most of the way through Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then I caught other people's reviews to the end because I didn't really care. But I'm going to dodge Loki. I'm aware of. I just started seeing the meme everywhere. If someone hadn't done X, they would have melted. I just saw that on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I dug into it a little bit, and what's the point of caring anymore?
Yeah, this is the really weird thing. Like, it seems like Marvel on TV is determined to destroy the MCU.
Yeah.
Like, everything that they built in the past 10 years or so, like, they are just slowly demolishing it with every new shitty television show that they bring out. For the life of me, I don't understand why, but if what I'm hearing about Loki is true, it sounds absolutely disastrous. Like, the day it came out, Mauler messaged me and he's like, "Have you fucking seen Loki? It's ridiculous."
I think
he's just raging about it.
I think they don't. I think they possibly got so big that they don't care about their origins anymore. This is a platform for whoever comes in to write whatever they want. It's I'll take all of these established things and I'll tell my story. Like a particular round-faced man a few years back. I'll take something that exists and I'll just tell my story. It won't matter.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to understand that everything they do will have a direct effect on the past because you're following on. If this was a separate story, it would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? Sort of like there was a movie, I believe it was Matt Damon, The Adjustment Bureau, something like that, and sounds interesting. You know, there's a group of people outside our existence that control everything we do. Interesting. Now there's a group of people that every time we ever cared about a character, we didn't need to worry because it was always going to be the way it was going to be.
Yeah. So like nothing the characters have done throughout the whole MCU was their choice. It was all just predetermined. So if that's the case, then why would you care about anything ever from this point going forward? It's just like, they're out to break their own universe, and I don't understand why. But anyway, I'll save that rant for another day when I've seen it and watched the whole series, I guess, and we'll maybe do a review. Nick B says, "I'm still not convinced Drinker didn't just escape from the local nut house and forget to shave or trim his nails." Aye, some kind of wolf man. Give me a kiss. I gave you one earlier, James Jernst. So don't worry. RNTNZ says, "Drinker, you're a man of the people. Stream with a subscriber equals great idea. Loved hearing you and Thunderchild share your enthusiasm for the film. As usual, after your streams, I'll check it out." Nice one. Thank you very much. Big Al says, "Hail, Drinker. May I bug you again to do a collab with Barry from Wolfman's Got Nards sometimes? I would love to see you two get stuck into an American werewolf in London." Well, if he's into werewolf movies, then we should do that. It feels like there's a real story arc going on here. We've gone from zombies to werewolves, and then we'll see what else we can do. So,
Aliens, because by that point you'll get to the Cornetto trilogy end with the World's End.
Muller and I we're going to finish up with World's End. So probably do that in a few weeks. What's the next one? Fake Name says, "Thanks, gents. No problem." Ken Bosak says, "Could you do a video on the movie Silk Road? Hashtag Free Ross." I've not seen that, actually, so I couldn't tell you.
Doesn't ring a bell.
David Rose says, "Drinker has finally gone and managed the Dog Soldier stream. Well played, sir. Missed most of the stream so far, but just want to say spoon one."
You
not
definitely
to worry.
gave that werewolf the shit.
Yeah, I hope he did. And ultimately, it got blown up anyway, so that was fine. He got the victory. But yeah, this will all get re-uploaded to my second channel anyway, so you'll be able to catch it there. What's the next one? Ryan Vert says, review suggestion, a show called Banshee on HBO Max. Yes, that's with Anthony Starr, apparently, from The Boys. Oh, yeah, here we go. So, yeah, it's about an ex-con played by Anthony Starr from The Boys who assumes the identity of a small-town sheriff. It's my favorite action show of all time, only 38 episodes. Right, so if it's got a limited run, yeah, I might give it a go, actually. High Ice 007 says, any idea when the Waterloo or Iron Eagle movie review is coming out? I did actually do a stream with History Bro from lotuseaters.com, and it's on YouTube now, where we talk about Waterloo. So that's kind of there already. If you look it up, that was really good chat we had, because man, that guy knows his stuff. Claudio Rogojan says, surprised they actually cared about the accuracy with the soldiers' weapons with all the L86 bullpup rifles. I'm pretty sure that's the model. Yeah, I mean, that's the standard assault rifle for the British Army. It still is even today. It used to be the SA-86, but they're weird things. Like, because I've held one. I've never fired one, but I've held it, and they're really light. Like, they feel like they're made out of plastic. So yeah, they're strange little things. I know the SAS and stuff aren't keen on them. Like, none of our special forces units used them because they felt like they were too delicate, and they were too like finely made. So they tend to go like with American assault rifles because, well, Americans know how to make guns. That's for sure. What's the next one? Peter O'Donovan says, Sean Pertwee for Doctor Who. Yeah, well, his dad did it, so why shouldn't he? And he's the spitting image of his old man.
No, that's a really interesting suggestion, that is.
Yeah.
That could genuinely work. I mean, I'm not sure. Did you watch Gotham?
No, I didn't actually, no.
No. I went through the whole series. Towards the end, it was more out of just, I need to complete this, than I was enjoying it. But he plays Alfred Pennyworth in Gotham.
Really?
And, yeah, and genuinely does, for at least for the first 3 or 4 series, does a fantastic job. If you could take that, a younger Alfred, he was fantastic with it. Like, very similar character to how, you know, how the Sarge talks to Megan in the movie, where he's doing that sort of the formal to civilians, yes, miss, please, thank you, etc. Very like that. Very well done, brilliantly done.
Okay. Where's the next one? Yeah, Chuck Grable says, here we are, born to be kings. We're the princes of the universe. That's a nice little reference to my Highlander review there. Honestly, I had to work really hard to get Princes of the Universe out of my fucking head because it was there for days after doing that. Like, I rewatched the movie and, like, yeah, it was stuck with me. But in a good way.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Now it's in my head.
Yeah. The only way to get rid of it is to listen to it.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Yeah, listen to it a couple of times and that'll usually be enough.
So the cure is the disease itself. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. The Rookie Critic says, hey, Drinker, I'm nearly finished on a video giving your channel some praise. I'll post it on the Fandom Collective YouTube channel this weekend and tag you. Thank you very much. Well, praising me. I love it. Aiken says, these streams are great. Another movie I haven't seen, but it's now on my list. Yes, definitely watch this film.
Watch it.
100% recommend. Andre Jones says, Drinker, keep doing what you're doing. Please, Thunderchild, well met. Simon G says, would love to see a review of Primer. Many rusty nails would need to be drunk to understand that movie. Okay. I haven't seen it, so I couldn't tell you. The Wake Down says, just a little something to show my appreciation for this amazing channel. Well, thank you, and I very much appreciate that. Trenton Quinn says, if Resident Evil 8 releases a Dog Soldiers DLC, that game would jump from an 8 to a 10. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
If you can get Spoon as a skin in it, that would just be the perfect end. Fuck Ethan Winters, we want Spoon in our Resident Evil games.
You've only got one thing in the inventory, and it's a frying pan.
Yeah, that's all he needs.
Oh no, and then you could switch with Cooper, and he's got his flashlight. So everyone gets their one weapon. Brilliant.
Yeah, there you go.
$1 million idea. Sell it.
That's it. J Templar 91 says, I'm going to get my Greek father and brother-in-law to watch this tomorrow night with Greek subs as part of a drunken lads night. Fucking
Nice.
perfect. Do it.
Yeah.
Get some beers in, get a takeaway. Wonder whether this will translate or is it two British balls of steel? I think you'll be all right, to be honest, and it'll get past the accents, so you should be all right.
I mean, the interesting thing is the one or two bits of slang, bone. They actually explain in the movie what it means as well, which is I think is quite funny.
Yeah, because it's Megan who asks. It's like, what the fuck does bone mean?
Yeah, bone, bollocks, naff, not very
Not
good.
very good.
So yeah, I think it would translate fine. I don't think there's not many things in there that it's just more the combination of words in terms of like in terms of the dialogue and what he's saying that makes it funny, as opposed to any like particular phrases.
Pants Reindeer says he chose Cooper because he was smart and would find the weak spot to cross a river or something. He wasn't chosen because of a grudge. Yeah, that is true. Ryan does say that Cooper was smart enough to spot the gap, but predictable enough to go for it.
He then does say that it's like, and then I thought of you, man, say monkey do.
Yeah, that's when Cooper loses his shit and tries to attack him.
He does clearly hold resentment towards Cooper for attacking a senior officer. Essentially, he was good. He did say, "Yeah, you were good enough to spot it and predictable enough to go for it." So that probably factored in. But I can see Ryan being vindictive.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Stephen Lanuto says, I want the drinker around for a brawl, not spoon. Don't fuck with me. He's got a kilt on. Any chance of a drinker recommends for the Crow. Man, yeah. I almost want to do a production hell on that because, wow, when it comes to like, yeah, like when it comes to your protagonist getting fucking literally killed in the making of your movie, like you can't really top that one. What a disaster. Poor Brandon Lee. Charles Hurst has gave me a $50 super sticker, man. Thank you for your generosity. That's very much appreciated. Activated Complex says, Spoon is why Hadrian built the wall. Stephen Lanuto, Drinker Event Horizon is Sarge's death dream. Oh, Jesus. What a way to go in that case. Daniel Munro says, evening, gentlemen. Great chat about one of the most underrated movies ever. I get the same sort of cinematic vibes as 28 Days Later and The Descent. Yep. Both excellent movies.
Yeah. It was a really strong period of British horror, sort of early 2000s to late 2000s.
Yes. Yeah, very much.
Even Descent 2 was fairly strong. I remember enjoying that movie. Then there were there was Doghouse, which was definitely a horror comedy with zombies and it's ridiculous, but again, it was made with care. It's quite funny. We had quite a spell. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think it kind of vibes quite well with the British way of making films, where we don't have the big budgets that Hollywood productions have, and so you have to get a bit more inventive with it. And with things like 28 Days Later, none of that uses big special effects shots or anything like that. It's all very like closed in. And they were shooting at London, they were shooting in London at like 3 a.m. or something, so that they could get like the empty streets. And it's all very guerrilla style, but like it absolutely pays off. And it just becomes a chilling sort of experience, just like it almost gets you psychologically as well as like in terms of what's going on screen. So yeah, I think we definitely went through that phase where we're producing great movies. It just feels like we've lost a bit of that now.
Yeah, I can't remember the last British movie that really sort of, or at least had the ability to travel the world.
Yeah, I mean, like the Bond movies are filmed in the UK, but I think they're technically American productions.
Really. In every way, shape, and form. They're not British movies.
Yeah, they're shot in Pinewood Studios, but really that's all you've got, really.
I've been there. I've been near the set. I went there to see Red Dwarf being filmed for the Dave series. I love it. It did remind me of something. It's reusing, because like we said, the Event Horizon mannequins were used in this movie. In the final scene of in the final series of Red Dwarf, they were using a lot of the medical equipment from the movie Prometheus because it was around. Yeah, the guy there was just describing if they've got someone to warm up the crowd, and he was saying that all of these pods were just left over from the movie Prometheus, and it does make sense. I think I remember Firefly used a lot of stuff from Starship Troopers. It's once a movie's made, if you've got a lower budget thing, you just buy it off them. So yeah, sorry, and a bit of a divergence, but
no, it makes sense. You know,
recycling.
Like you say, like you made all these expensive props for your movie. What do? Do you just throw them out, or do you like keep them and you can reuse them for something else later? I know Star Trek was like notorious for that. Like you get stuff from the movies back in the 80s that was reused in like TNG and Voyager and stuff, like because they just had them in their warehouse at Paramount. Might as well make use of them. What's the next one here? Tommy Key 07 says, apologies if this is already discussed, but what is your take on the woman's motivation? So I think probably by the time this came through, we kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah. I still don't know when she turned from trying to escape to trying to help the werewolves. That bit's confusing, and the whole introduction of the plot with Ryan and how she had brought them there. It is a struggle. We have to assume that initially she was looking to get out, and then she realized she couldn't get out, so decided to fall back in with the family. But I'm quietly confident that she wasn't part of the family originally, that she went there, like she said, and that they turned her.
Yeah,
maybe by accident, maybe on purpose. Beyond that, I'm generally sorry. I'd say it's one of the bigger weaknesses of the movie in terms of the story.
I think they were working.
Make it sound like it's not crushing, because
no, I think they were working within the constraint of like they needed to have her turn, and they needed to give her a reason for not having told them that she was infected with this thing. And so what they came up with was a little bit of a compromise solution where it's a bit murky as to what she was actually trying to achieve and like how long she'd known about this. So yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. I think it could have done with a bit more fleshing out, probably.
Yeah, I agree.
Trenton Quinn says, you gents ever do a stream on Joker, and I'll happily join in with steaks and whiskey in hand. Killer stream, guys, and you're a natural Thunderchild.
Oh,
there you go. Mate. A career in streaming awaits you.
I'll be honest, I didn't pop to the toilet. I've been going out to catch my breath and just screaming into a pillow every time I walk. I've been fine. Actually, thank you. I will check out the chat. I've been terrified to look, if I'm honest, but I just like to say cheers to Drinker before we got going. Top bloke. Actually spent a bit of time with me, made sure I was normal. For one of his,
you're on the borderline.
Okay, for one of your subscribers, I am normal. That gives you an idea of the. But no, it's been an amazing experience. It truly has, and especially talking about Dog Soldiers. I mean, what more do you want, really?
That's it, yeah. As long as the guest gets to talk about a movie they really like I'm fine with that. What's the next one? Cody Griffin says, totally off topic, but Drinker, have you seen Doctor Sleep, and what did you think if you have? I haven't seen that yet, actually, so I am interested to see it because I hold up The Shining as one of the best horror movies I've seen. And so, yeah, I've not heard great things about Doctor Sleep, but yeah, I'll give it a go.
Don't hate me, Drinker. I've not seen The Shining.
Oh, really? Well, I recommend you put that right.
There's a few movies, maybe you have this, maybe you don't, maybe someone else in the chat will understand, that have been so built up, like The Godfather, like The Shining, that I'm almost afraid to watch them in case I don't like it. I'm not sure that the expectation can ever meet the reality of watching it. It's sometimes it's worked out. Like, I didn't watch Goodfellas because I was Reputation until an ex-girlfriend made me watch it, and it was a great movie. I enjoyed it. It's not really my genre, but I appreciated it. So, do you know what, actually, Drinker? I will watch, before your next happy hour, I will watch The Shining.
There you go. I mean, I think all you can ask is, like, you give it a try, and even if it's not living up to your expectations, you've kind of given it a go, and I think you would still get enjoyment out of it, even if it's not quite your thing.
I'm sure it's got Jack Nicholson in it, so...
Yeah.
We're off to a winner anyway, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, the direction and stuff is great, and it's really good at creating that very unsettling mood. There's not gore and violence like you get in this movie, but like it does very different things. But I very much enjoy it. Um, Andrew Bomer says, have either of you seen or heard of Cemetery Man? It's an Italian zombie movie with a lot of dark humor and great lines to quote. No, I've never
No,
heard of it.
sorry.
I'm honest. What's the next one here? Aurora Uplinks says, how about Dog Soldiers prequel, Puppy Soldiers? Yeah, do it. We need a prequel about how the family got infected with the lycanthrope virus.
Maybe you'll take the Cruella route and you'll find out that actually it's not the family's fault, that they were attacked by trained puppies and they returned.
Yes, exactly, yeah. It's all the puppies' fault, and they're perfectly right to become murderous werewolves.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, God, what an awful movie. Uthier1 says, zombies, werewolves, why not do one about vampire movies in early 2000s, like Queen of the Damned or Underworld? Cheers with an Imperial Stout 10.5%. Nice. I'd happily talk about any of those. Having done zombies and having done werewolves, I should probably do a vampire movie. And maybe Underworld could be the way forward. I'll see. There's 30 Days of Night, which I love. That's a great
that was the
movie.
one I was... I've watched that very recently because you can go back and watch that. If I was to recommend any movie, if one of your guests goes for it, it's 30 Days a Night, or it might be a bit of a leap, but From Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh yeah. Dusk Till Dawn, fantastic movie.
Yeah.
So. To switch genres like that mid movie is just genius. Like it does it really well.
I didn't realize they were. I when I was younger, it was on telly every now and again. It like when I shouldn't have been awake o'clock, and I flipped it on, and it took me years to realize that it was the same movie because I'd catch maybe the last quarter of an hour, and it'd just be this horror movie with a drill with a stake attached to it, and then I watched the other bit, and it was these two people kidnapping a maid, and it took me years to actually see it together.
Yeah. It's just what a cool flip to like start out as a hostage kind of heist movie, and then just suddenly flip into like vampires. I just love it. It's so random and so off the, just out of nowhere, but it just works so well. Claudio Rogojan says you should do a stream on Mask of Zorro. Done. I've done that with EFAT Movies. That was what prompted me to do my review actually on my second channel. Or a Jackie Chan film like Drunken Master 2. Yes. Or a crappy one like City Hunter, good movie to get drunk to. I got so many to do. I need to do They Live as well. That's one of my priorities now. The Horrific podcast says we could have a Spoonie fact like the new Chuck Norris. Yeah. Spoon once visited the Virgin Islands. Now they're just called the Islands. Daniel Monroe says, hi again, random question. If you could do an origin story for the Penguin or the Scarecrow, who would you choose, or would you not at all? The Penguin's kind of got his origin story in Batman Returns, which is nice and sinister, like thrown into a sewer when he was a baby. Don't care about the Scarecrow that much, so nah. It would have to be the Penguin.
I would do the Scarecrow. I actually find him quite a fascinating character.
Really?
In terms of what his weapon of choice is.
Fear.
Obviously, I know a little bit about comics. I'm not going to say I'm going to spin around and there's going to be comics on the wall. There's not. But just what he does and how he goes about doing it, I just find it. You could do quite a bit with that. How someone ends up like that, what leads him there, and you don't need anything supernatural in his case. He was, he's been working on something. You don't want to fall down he falls in a jar of his own fear juice route. You could do something with that, but Scarecrow would be interesting to do. But like you said, I think with Penguin and Batman Begins I'm happy. I'd like that version of it. And Gotham, again, bring it back to Gotham, actually handles the origin of Penguin quite well. And it gets a bit weird at the end, but he starts off as like a low level, just an umbrella holder for like one of the big bosses. He's just a young lad with a gimpy leg, and like over the course of it he like builds himself up into a crime boss, but his origins is like bottom tier, sort of lucks his way up.
Okay. Interesting. Someone in chat, Scooter Tart here, saying The Keep, that's an often forgotten about gem. Yes, The Keep is a very interesting horror movie. I'm sure Ian McKellen's in that and Scott Glenn, like great actors. But yeah, I like that film. What's the next one? Malbrain says, "Love your stuff, drinker. Sorry, once again, Grabber, Father Ted versus Aliens. Do go." Okay. Stephen Lanuto, RE8 DLC, Spoon Hunts Chris. You're going to the Kazi. There's so much you could do. We need Dog Soldiers, the game.
Yeah.
Cody Griffin says, "Well, if you can, and when you do, try to watch the director's cut of Doctor Sleep. Personally, one of my favorites. But what do I know? Well, I mean, yeah. If I'm going to watch the movie, I'd rather get the best version."
You know much more than I do, sir.
What's the next one? There's just a couple left, actually. The Horrific Podcast. Check out Blood Vessel on Shudder. It's a great recent vampire movie. Blood Vessel. Okay. That Star Wars girl. Hello, Anna. Just stopped by to show some love. Thank you. You're both as hyped for Henry's Highlander as I am. My body is not quite as ready as yours for a remake of Highlander, I suspect. Love Henry Cavill. I just wish he would get some great franchises to sink his teeth into. Hopefully he can do it with The Witcher, but I'm a bit dubious about Highlander remake.
I am dubious. However, Henry Cavill has recently replaced Ryan Reynolds as the one.
If you've got to do it, it would be with him.
If you had to do it, that question, Henry, it just does things to me.
It's frustrating though, like, because he's a great actor, and I think there's so many roles right now that he could fill. Like, you could definitely play James Bond.
Yeah,
he's obviously doing The Witcher. He's great as Superman, even though he's like been lumbered with shit movies. Like, he's great in all these different roles. It's just like none of them have worked out for him yet. And
him as a bad guy in Fallout. Mission Impossible Fallout. I thought it was fantastic. I thought he sold it quite well, being arrogant and cocky. I think maybe he could show up as a villain more often. Just mix up a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, it kind of harkens back to that old, the Brits often play villains kind of thing, because they want someone who seems a bit more intellectual or whatever. So maybe it's that. But yeah, great. I'd love to see him at the center of like a new franchise that's really awesome, because I think he absolutely deserves it, and he's got the star power to do it. He just hasn't quite found that niche yet. I hope The Witcher pans out for him.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I realised it had problems, but entertaining watch, and he was great in it.
Yeah. Claudio Rogajan says, "You mentioned the MCU earlier. I just wanted to say I'm worried about the new Spider-Man film. I hope it's not him cleaning up Tony Stark's mess again."
Well, it doesn't matter, does it?
It's all predetermined, so if he doesn't get it exactly right,
what did the lizard say happened? And if it doesn't, then he gets melted.
I mean, I got to be honest, like, I'm not massively invested in the new Spider-Man movies. I think, whatever the fuck his name is, Tom Holland, he's doing a great job with it. It's all fine. It's all like safe, dependable Marvel stuff. I've had so many Spider-Man movies in the past like 10, 15 years. I just don't care that much about it now. Maybe that's just me.
I don't think it's just you. I think it's great to have a character that's dependable, but we had the Raimi trilogy, then Garfield, and then this lot as well. I don't think enough time has passed to be able to reinvent that character, to like do something new. It's just slight variations on each one. You need to give it like a good 10 years and just be like, Spider-Man's back, bang, like they do with Batman.
Yeah. What's the next one? Simon G says, "I'm not a serial killer." I don't believe you. Great movie with Christopher Lloyd as a demon. Okay, cool. I'm not a serial killer. Christopher Lloyd, always great. Stephen Otten says, "Spoon doesn't sleep. He waits." Indeed. Waits with a frying pan in hand. Yeah, that's... that, I think, brings us to the end of all the super chats. And every time I say that, someone else sends another one, so I'm just standing by here, but hopefully that won't happen. But yeah, I mean, like, we've obviously had a good chance to talk about Dog Soldiers, and it's been a great film. Like, it's been great to rewatch it, and it's been really enjoyable to talk to you about it, man.
The pleasure has been mine, and since I have you and since I have chat, and I've got the opportunity to speak to them, thank you. Genuinely thank you for everything you do. Most of us have had a pretty dire straight of it the last couple of years, and quite frankly, you editing Sam and Neil screaming into half your videos has just got us through it, mate. And references to and I know I just joke, mate, but if you can do what you do, enjoy it, and other people are happy, you're on to a great thing. Keep doing it, mate. It's amazing. It truly is.
No, thank you, man. I'm very lucky that I get to do something like this and make a bit of a living out of it. So it's very enjoyable. And, it's great to be able to bring, people on who aren't content creators and all that other stuff, just people who watch my stuff and just wanted to connect and talk about a film. So it's nice to have that balance of different folks. So
and it's an honor to be here as one of the plebs.
Yeah, not at all. But yeah, thank you for giving up a couple hours of your time to do this. And, thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone in chat who's watched this and given us great comments, and all the awesome super chats, all the generosity. It's always appreciated from you guys. So thank you. There's right on cue a couple have come in, so I'll just read them out, shall I?
Yeah.
Claudio Rogajan says, "Oh yeah, we had a debate on that Star Wars girl stream last night about Captain Love from Zorro. She said he's a terrible actor. I thought he was fine. He's very, very blonde. I noticed that, extremely blonde hair, which almost seems unnatural. No one has hair that yellow.
He reminds me of, do you know in Jumanji when his dad is the hunter?
Yes.
Yeah. It looks like that. That just came to me because I just pictured him and went, oh, wait, no, that's Jumanji. Oh, no.
I think he was all right. In terms of his performance, he was nice and sinister at times with the head in the jar and stuff. So that's fair enough. What's another one? John Douglas here says, "Hang on. What about a sequel to Dog Soldiers? What would that be like? Just don't do one. Don't do it.
Leave it alone.
We don't need it.
Or have it so completely removed that they could call it a different name. But just don't leave it alone, please."
But yeah, that I believe brings us to the end. So I guess for me and from Farewell Thunderchild, that's all we've got for today. So we're going to go away now.